We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
What's pro football focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Ready to get into it?
Yeah.
All right. We're going team by team.
I would be very careful about slinging stones.
Am I going to get sued?
We got legal on this?
I like football season and all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're live here on YouTube. It's Week 18 review time.
It is, which means that's it. That's the final Week 18, the end of the regular season.
Yeah, this
just
is
the playoffs to go.
Think about how easy the future is going to be when we only have 6 games to preview and review next week.
We can finally get into them.
Yeah,
that's where we really get into our stride.
Really dig in.
Half an hour per review.
So yeah, we're going to go through most, if not all, of the games from yesterday, and then the fallout. And there's all sorts of stuff to get through. So I want to get into it. Let's start with though. Since the last time we talked, very good updates on Damar Hamlin, him tweeting and breathing on his own, and all sorts of basically just good stuff coming out of the Damar Hamlin situation, given the circumstances. And what an incredible start to that Bills game, man! A kickoff return for a touchdown, like a I don't want to say like a Hollywood script, but it was just an incredible moment in that stadium with that start for the Bills.
Yeah, the good news updates for Damar Hamlin have only continued since the last couple of shows we did. It was just starting to get good news, positive updates, although sort of fairly nondescript, vague updates. And then from that moment on, from the point where he regained consciousness and was extubated and all that kind of thing, everything's been good. It's been a phenomenal run of good news and just an outstanding end result to this whole tragedy. One other thing I forgot to mention, by the way, we posted his toy drive, which I think is over 8 million now, something like that. The other thing that people can do if you're looking to, because Damar Hamlin's kind of career and life going forward is still very much up in the air. One thing that benefits him directly, as opposed to gives him the ability to give money to children, if you buy his jersey, he gets a pretty big chunk of that, I think. I don't know what the percentage is. But
Yeah.
Like, that's a way that he actually individually benefits if, the worst happens and he can't resume an NFL career or whatever. So no idea if that's the case or not, but if you want to actually channel money into the hands of Damar Hamlin, then that's a way of doing it.
Yeah, there was also a report that the NFL, when he goes on injured reserve, you usually only get a prorated portion of your salary, but the NFL and the NFLPA agreed to give him his full salary.
Right, the Bills.
The Bills, right. And so a lot of good stuff, coming out of that, where, again, a lot of people coming together and making do as best they could in a tough situation. So with that, we had a full slate, all 16 games. Saturday, it started with Chiefs and Raiders. Let's start with that. Chiefs 31, Raiders 13. The Chiefs clinched the number 1 seed, so we knew this going into Sunday that the Chiefs would be the number 1 seed. Mm-hmm. The only thing coming out of the canceled game now is if Buffalo had beaten Cincinnati, they would be the number 1 seed. So that's still on the table, that if Chiefs-Bills play each other, that could be a neutral site for the AFC Championship. But the Chiefs pretty much just dominated the Raiders from start to finish. It was not the same Jarrett Stidham effort as we saw the previous week, and it looked like, hey, the number 1 seed going up against a 6-11 team, which is what the Raiders finished up as.
Yeah, this was going to require like Jarrett Stidham having a very good game if they were going to have anything like that kind of run. It's funny, like there was a lot of games this week where one team just needed to take care of some business, just get the win, get out the other side and move into the playoffs or whatever, continue with your seeding. Kansas City was the team that handled it, I think, most comfortably. Like, this just wasn't difficult. They just went in there. They did what Kansas City usually does. They broke open the bag of tricks, and pulled out some weird stuff that we haven't seen before, like the little merry-go-round ring-a-ring-a-rosy play. And then they just, went home. It was it.
How long do you think they've been sitting on that play?
That has to take some practice. I also wondered, when what's that thing where you, with the baseball bat and you spin around it and then you try and do something?
Dizzy bat race.
Yeah. Is there a danger that if you do too many of the ring-a-ring-a-rosies, everyone's just like...
I assume you worked that out at practice, though.
Figure out how many times you can go around the circle before it's detrimental?
Yeah, there was almost certainly one practice where they're like, hey, 12's too many. Let's do 4 rotations.
That's enough.
Right?
No more.
And then you have to know, like, who's the point man, right? What equals a revolution.
Right.
And then break, right? And for those that didn't see the play, the Chiefs did their huddle. They spun around in a merry-go-round a few times, broke the huddle with who took the direct snap? Was it Tony? No, not Tony.
No, it was the running back.
Jerick McKinnon.
Yes, McKinnon.
Jerick McKinnon lines up with the direct snap. They run a speed option look where they pitch it to Patrick Mahomes, who
with
throws
Mahomes
it.
As the tailback.
Yeah, he's the tailback. They pitch the speed option to Mahomes, who throws a screen back to Kadarius Toney, who runs into the end zone. But there's a holding to negate it. It was the most famous play in this game. Didn't count.
Right.
But it was like,
And by the way, the Raiders almost blew it up. Like when it got the ball back to Toney, whoever the DB was on that side, like almost got there, forced it back inside, like almost got a hold of Toney. And then once he was done, like the rest of the team was out of it.
So you're just setting stuff up for the playoffs, right? The merry-go-round.
Yeah.
Once again, takeaways for me, though, coming out of this game, Mahomes hits a bomb to Justin Watson early. Mahomes looked sharp again outside of maybe 1 or 2 throws. And then Jerick McKinnon finds the end zone again. It was a great play by Mahomes, scrambling out, pitches it to him as he drew the defense, as we've seen him do a ton this year. Mm-hmm. But to me, it's this Jerick McKinnon and Kadarius Toney. Even if the production for Toney isn't off the charts or anything, there's a handful of plays a game where it's like, this dude was a first-rounder. He looks like a first-rounder that the Chiefs picked up for free. And the Chiefs' offense morphing from the speed threat that is Tyreek Hill to more of these satellite space players, right? Like McKinnon and like Toney. Just dangerous weapons that they have. As the league has tried to put the shell on the top of the defense, right, to take the deep ball away from Mahomes and the Chiefs, getting these guys in space, I think, has been one of the stories of the season for the Chiefs.
Well, Toney in particular, like we talk about how this offense is already good. It's already arguably the best in the NFL across the board. And then you're like, you take a guy like Kadarius Toney, and a lot of people are sort of going, oh, he's not even making that many plays. Like, yeah, but the plays that he does make, it's each one of them is just a little cherry on the top of this entire offense.
Absolutely.
It's like every single one of those plays, he's doing something above and beyond what a quote-unquote regular receiver does. The ball's in his hands. He'll throw one move. One guy gets made to look ridiculous, and then maybe 2 or 3 more do as well. But you're like, God, you add that guy to this offense, it really just feels like cheating. It's just too much. Like Tyreek Hill. The special that he brings to the table, it added to this offense. Just, it's silly. So that combination of, like, this thing is already cooking, and then you add a Kadarius Toney, who may only, like, feature in 3 plays in the game, but those 3 plays will all be better for his addition.
We've talked about, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but we've talked about receiving cores being like basketball teams. The Chiefs just have this series of playmakers with Toney and McKinnon as these space-type players, with Travis Kelce as this uncoverable tight end, Isaiah Pacheco as this power running back, Marquez Valdes-Scantling as a deep threat. They just have different style players. Juju as a more of a possession-type receiver over the middle of the field. That makes it tough to cover, right? They have answers to a lot of the problems defenses are throwing at them. So, Chiefs win.
Chris Jones absolutely destroyed Alex Bars in this game.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to highlight
previous
Jones.
Game, I think it was Dylan Parham he wrecked in the last game, but the point being either one of the Raiders' interior, like the guards, going up against Chris Jones was likely to be a problem heading into this game, and this time it was Alex Bars who gave up, I think, 8 pressures, something like that. Chris Jones had 11 in the game by himself. That was a game changer. Yeah,
Jarrett Stidham was sacked 6 times, so many of them with Chris Jones winning right off the snap. He finishes the season, Jones, with a 92 overall grade. He had a 90 grade in this game. 92 overall grade, though. It's the 3rd time in 5 years that he, third time in 6 years, I believe, actually, that he has finished with a 90-plus PFF grade.
Legitimate Defensive Player of the Year candidacy, I think, from Chris Jones.
Ooh.
And the first time in however many years when Aaron Donald has not been the best interior pass rusher in the NFL. Even if Donald had made it through the season, I don't think he would have been the number one guy. Chris Jones is probably that guy this year.
All right, so there we go. Raiders head to the offseason at 6-11. Chiefs, will see them in a couple weeks. They're getting the bye at 14-3. Second game on Saturday was in Jacksonville. Jacksonville Jaguars win 20-16 over the Tennessee Titans. We had the AFC South on the line here. Jags finished the season at 9-8, and as AFC South champions, Titans fall to 7-10. This was kind of a hard-fought game for most of it, and it felt like such a Titans game. I guess we're texting back and forth. It was like the most Titans game ever, wasn't it? Derrick Henry finishes with 30 carries for 109 yards. Joshua Dobbs made some really good throws. Under pressure, he was keeping the Titans in it. But it's a fumble 6 by Josh Allen, fumble return for a touchdown for the fourth quarter comeback for the Jaguars. Stat per ESPN Stats and Info. It was the first time since 2000 that a team had a fourth quarter comeback win without a first down in the fourth quarter. That was the Jags, because their offense was pretty stagnant down the stretch.
Yeah, and it's not like, Trevor Lawrence caught fire late on, pulled it out, and got the W. It's they just they just got a big play somewhere else that put them back in the lead and didn't relinquish it. Yeah, Lawrence, I don't think had a great game in this one.
He made some plays early. Definitely, he had a wide open touchdown that he missed. He had some rough ones in there.
Yeah, he was off with a few plays, and it just didn't seem like he was playing particularly well. And as I say, it's not like the flipping of which team was going to take the win was all to do with Lawrence late on. Like it was something else making that happen. But everyone's entitled to a game where they don't play particularly well. I think Dobbs was impressive in this game. The Jags dialed up a lot of blitzes for him. Like they were testing him and coming after him, particularly early, to try and see what he had, and he had answers for it. He missed a couple of throws early against pressure where he went to the right place and the pass was just slightly inaccurate. He could have had an even bigger impact, but that was impressive. Like I thought going in that their best chance of a functional offense was still to just embrace the unique athletic ability of Malik Willis and craft something around him. But Dobbs, I don't know if anything they could have done with Willis would have been as good as what they had with Dobbs in this game. That was an impressive performance.
Yeah, I think they made the right move with Josh Dobbs as the quarterback, given that Willis hadn't really developed as a passer this year, and you didn't want to completely rely just on his legs. The Titans end up losing 7 straight to end the season. They were 7-3.
Yeah.
I mean, this is an amazing turnaround. At one point, the Jags were 3-7, the Titans were 7-3, and now the Jags only lost one more time since that point, finished at 9-8, and the Titans lose their last 7 games, right around the time they fired John Robinson, their general manager.
I mean, a huge part of it is also like they had the worst offensive line in the NFL for like the second half of the season. I mean, you look at the starters in this game. We had right tackle rookie, third-round rookie, Nicholas Petit-Frere, right guard Jordan Roos, who I don't think is any relation to Michael Roos, who was an All-Pro.
Titans left tackle legend.
Yeah. Corey Levin at center, Aaron Brewer at left guard, Dennis Daly at left tackle. Like, is one of those guys an intended starter at the start of the year? Like, this is not what that offensive line was supposed to look like, and it just got destroyed for the entire second half of the season.
Yeah, it feels like the Titans' lack of talent just caught up to them, right? Like
that old chestnut.
But I mean, when they were 7-3, it felt like our analysis every week was, hey, Joe Schobert stepped up this week. Journeyman left linebacker, right? Like it was just somebody random stepping up every single week, and we were singing the praises of Mike Vrabel, and rightfully so, right? He led them to the number 1 seed last year with a similar group of injuries, a ridiculous number of players that they played last year and all this stuff. And this year it looked like, well, Vrabel's doing it again. He's the next Mike Tomlin, which he's not. Obviously, he just had a losing season. You can't be Mike Tomlin forever. Right? You can never be Mike Tomlin.
Nope.
I still think Vrabel's a very good coach, and I don't know the the real reasons why John Robinson was fired. If it was just like, hey, this roster's bad, you're out.
Yeah.
Or if they wanted a different voice or there was fights internally, whatever that reason was. But when you're looking up and down the roster, it's like they felt closer to a 7-11 team than they felt like than a number 1 seed, right? Like this is there's somewhere in between here, and they just kind of fell off. Plus Ryan Tannehill's injury is a pretty significant
That's the
one.
thing. They got very unlucky with injuries. Not necessarily in volume, but this was already not a very good roster, and then all of the important players that were playing well got hurt.
Yeah.
So Ryan Tannehill goes down. Traylon Burks, who was supposed to be, you traded away A.J. Brown. Traylon Burks comes in. It's a lot of pressure on the guy's shoulders, but he has to be something this year. Otherwise, by definition, that receiving core is getting a lot worse because Robert Woods, I don't think is going to be the guy right away. Traylon Burks gets knocked out of a game, misses some time. Jeffrey Simmons was having a Chris Jones type of season for the first half of the year, gets an ankle injury. I don't think he's been the same guy since he came back from that, even once he finally made it back to the field. I think he missed a couple of weeks with that ankle, came back. It just hasn't been playing at the same kind of level. Like you look at his PFF game grades, there's 390 grades in the first half of the season. There's nothing above 70 in the second half of the season. So they were already not a great roster, but then any area where they had like an important player playing well, that guy got hurt, and the whole thing just like spiraled from there.
From a Jaguars perspective, one of the turning points was a fumble. They tried a little trickeration in the red zone. They faked the speed option end around to Jamal Agnew. That was a fumble that took some points off the board. And as I mentioned, Trevor Lawrence had a wide open pass that he overthrew in the end zone. The Jags were just stopping themselves early on, really, on multiple drives. Lawrence's overthrow came on third down. They settled for a field goal. It was basically a 4-point miss. But the strip sack late of Josh Dobbs, the Jaguars defense, really did a nice job. Henry got over 100 yards, but it was on 30 carries. They did a really nice job bottling him up. The ageless Corey Peters with a huge game. I thought Trayvon Walker did some nice stuff in the run game. And it was a weekend for all Josh Allens. Josh Allen of the Jags had 7 pressures in this game. Arden Key had 7 pressures. So Jags defense really stepped up when they needed them, and leading them to the AFC South crown. They're gonna host the Chargers in the first game next Saturday. It's the first game Saturday night. Second game of Super Wild Card Weekend. Jaguars and the Chargers for the first time ever in the playoffs.
Yeah. That's all I got.
Wow, that's dynamite drop-in, Monty. That broadcasting school's really starting to pay off. That's from Major League. All right, Jags win 20-16. Congrats to the Jags. I got to say, Jacksonville gets a little hate for, when they weren't good, the stadium was empty and all that stuff. It's a good football town when they're good.
Fair weather fans.
That's
literally.
You're putting words in my mouth here. When they're good, like that place was bumping. That place was electric.
Stadium shows up, everybody's there. It's like,
Reminded me of 1998.
Of course it did.
When the Jags were, they hosted their first playoff game. It was electric. Anyway, congrats to the Jags. And Doug Peterson. What a turnaround, Doug Peterson, in year one.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's either a great turnaround or the expected turnaround
it's
after
both.
Urban Meyer.
But it is one of those things where you're left with the inevitable question of, if you simply replaced Urban Meyer with anybody, what would the record be?
Yeah. But there's a lot of work to change the culture and undo the bad seeds.
No, but there isn't. That's the thing. It's like all you have to do to change the culture is not go around beating your kickers.
Yeah.
Like that's a really low bar. Really low.
With the team.
Like
don't kick anyone.
Simply go through the week without actually physically assaulting any of your players. That's your bar here. Feels like a pretty easy one to clear.
Consider it cleared by Doug Peterson. The PFF NFL podcast is sponsored by Western and Southern Financial Group. While you focus on your roster moves, Western and Southern helps advance your money moves. Buying your first home, planning to start a family, wondering how to make your money grow? Well, Western and Southern's playbook of life insurance, investment, and retirement solutions helps you rest assured on game day. Team up to understand needs and address goals with a game plan built just for you. Get started at westernsouthern.com/PFF. Shout out to Western Southern. We're sitting here at the Western Southern studio here.
In their studio.
Right there.
Can we get the city is all lit up orange again for the Bengals Super Bowl run. Can we get like an orange light, like a filter or something put on that?
Yeah, we got to get orange for
Right.
the city. We definitely need some orange here. All right, let's get to Sunday's action. Let's start in Buffalo, man. 35-23, the Bills clinched the number 2 seed. We'll go through some AFC stuff right now. But as I mentioned earlier, starting the game with a 96-yard kickoff return for a touchdown from Naheem Hines. Place was off the chain after that one. That was is that good? Is that the right answer? Off their rocker, off the chain. They were really excited in Buffalo. Did you see when the
cool?
It's very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. It was hip. We used to make fun of our parents for saying hip.
Yeah.
Did you see when the Chargers reporters were trying to get Justin Herbert? What were they trying to get him to say?
Yeah, turned.
Trying to get him to say turned.
Yeah,
he's like, I won't do that.
Right.
That was good. Yeah, I got suckered in, and I set myself up.
Yeah, it was good. Well
say something I didn't want to say. So Bills 35, Patriots 23. It was a good back and forth game for a while, but what turned it around? Well, Josh Allen making big time throws. It's 21-17 late in the third quarter. Josh Allen rolls right and hits John Brown like it's 2020, like it's 2020. John Brown for 42 yards, beautiful pass, maybe even a better catch. Stretches him out for 42, and then one of the throws of the year, really. Josh Allen, far hash, 49-yarder, in stride to Stephon Diggs to seal the deal to go up 35-23. Allen with some hashtag big-time throws down the stretch there for the Bills.
Yeah, Allen played really well. Obviously, that opening kickoff being returned for a touchdown, A, huge for Buffalo. B, that stadium was so noisy, so over the top at that point. I think they had a good, didn't they have a good defensive opening drive as well? And all of a sudden, the noise is just absolutely mind-blowing at that point. I think New England went 3 and out after the kick return touchdown. So all of a sudden, the stadium, the noise and the atmosphere in that stadium is just insane. They get another kick return touchdown later in the game. First time since 2010 that a team has had 2 kick return touchdowns in the same game. Basically, since before they tried to remove the kick return from the game. You know what I mean?
Unbelievable, really.
You got to go back to those times where people actually return kicks regularly to find a guy who's managed to put 2 of them for a touchdown. Honestly, that's basically the difference in this game. Actually, New England gave a pretty good fist of it after that. We're doing a reasonable job. We're getting Buffalo here and there with plays of their own. Sort of not lost in everything, but Buffalo's secondary depth has been tested all season long, really. They started the season with, 6th round rookie Christian
Benford.
Yep. Starting over Kyer Elam. They've been pushed deep into the depth chart at basically every position in the secondary. It's still, clinging on, and they were getting beat by some plays here or there. Kyer Elam, the 1st round rookie, got beat with a jump ball to Devontae Parker at one point. That cut the lead from 10-3. The Patriots actually, this was a close game, but for the 2 kick return touchdowns and then a couple of big Josh Allen plays.
Yeah, and it was definitely one of the better games, really, for the Patriots offense. Couple turnovers in there. There's a interception where I think Nelson Aguilar could have done a better job, running a route instead of whatever he was doing.
It was also pass. Yeah. It was a terrible effort by Aguilar at the catch point. It was also a pass that probably shouldn't have been put in the air at any point.
Yeah, I'm just saying there was outside of a couple turnovers, for whatever that's worth, New England actually did a pretty good job moving the ball. They had a bunch of 4th down conversions and everything. I think the big takeaway for me is how many times New England just beat themselves these last, just the last half of the season. If you think about the Raiders game, of course, with the laterals, they had running into the kicker against the Vikings on Thanksgiving night. They had these, a Bill Belichick team getting just being one of the worst special teams in the league. And they won a game this year directly because of special teams with Marcus Jones with a walk-off punt return. That's how the Patriots finished the season at 8-9, and it's such a, took a punt return for a touchdown to win one of those games. But the special teams letdowns, giving up 2 kick returns for touchdowns. Not only is the New England offense just needing an overhaul this offseason, Mac Jones talked about, hey, they didn't progress in his second year here, and it was basically a wasted season of development for Mac Jones. I thought he played pretty well in this game outside of a couple throws.
Well, the best case scenario it was a wasted season of development. Like the worst case scenario is it's actually damaging to his future.
Damaging, yeah, and who knows? So we'll see if New England's going to act quickly with Bill O'Brien or whatever. But the special teams are an issue there too, because the defense hung tough this year in New England. I know they played a lot of bad quarterbacks, and Belichick takes advantage of those defensively. But when they the special teams and offense really letting them down this year in New England.
What was your stat of non-Tom Brady seasons for Belichick?
Oh, boy. I was just putting some facts out there, and a lot of people get upset.
Just spitting facts.
Bill Belichick has been the head coach for 10 seasons without Tom Brady as a starting quarterback, including the 2008 season with Matt Castle. He's only made the playoffs twice.
That's a 20% rate.
It's 20%.
By my math.
2 out of 10. So that's he made the playoffs 1 out of 5 seasons in Cleveland. That was 1994. And then in New England, year 2000, he comes in. He's got Bledsoe for the first year. And then 2008 with Castle. And then the last 3 years, 2020, 21, and 22.
Cam Newton, Mac Jones.
Cam Newton, Mac Jones the last 2 years. Only 2021 did the Patriots make the playoffs in those 5 years. Now, people have like reading comprehension issues, and they're like, "You're telling me Tom Brady played for the Browns in the 90s?" I said, no. I said, there's 10 seasons Belichick coached without Tom Brady as his starter, and he's only been in the playoffs 2 out of those 10 years.
How many years with the Browns did he have Bernie Kosar before he got broken?
I forget what the QB breakdown was there.
Certainly had it from 1 when he was good. Yeah, that's not great. It's not great, Bob.
No. And look, I know there's always context around that and everything. How much would you expect the 2020 Patriots to really compete in transition or whatever? But they did a nice job last year in 21 to kind of overachieve, because make it into the playoffs. But they regressed this year, and I think you could directly look at some of those offseason decisions. Belichick hiring Matt Patricia as offensive coordinator, the special teams falling apart, right? A lot of those things are the reasons why New England couldn't sneak in as the 7 seed. While Miami did with Skylar Thompson at quarterback.
Yeah, another, you were talking about the kind of special teams miscues. After they'd given up 2 kick return touchdowns to Nyheim Hines, they were like, well, let's not kick it to Nyheim Hines anymore, and then managed to kick it out of bounds while trying to squib it sort of safely to the sideline somewhere. So, yeah, that wasn't great. The pass that Mac Jones put in the air that Nelson Aguilar, gave up on effectively. Mac Jones is reminding me a little bit at the moment of, remember a couple of years ago where Derek Carr had sort of hit that plateau and hadn't really rebounded since the 2016 year where he was really good. It felt like Derek Carr used to take deep shots because it felt like he hadn't taken a deep shot for a while. And it's like, well, I understand that in order to keep the defense honest, I need to threaten the deep ball. So now it's time. It's due, right? I haven't done one for a while. This is the play. And he just used to put the ball in the air deep, regardless of what the coverage looked like. That's not, the deep ball is supposed to be there against a specific coverage at a specific time when they're giving you the look. It's not like I just need to threaten this area of the field once at some point on a regular basis. It's not like a randomizer. So Mac Jones feels a bit like that Derek Carr period where there doesn't seem to be reason for when he takes a deep shot. It's just like, this is the deep shot play. And that felt like one of them. Like that play, Aguilar against Tre'Davious White, the look, it wasn't single coverage on the outside. There was a safety there. Like that was not a look that should have created.
And Aguilar wasn't ever even.
No, but
right?
even.
That whole if you're even, you're leaving, right?
Yeah.
You're giving your receiver a shot. The corner was on top of that the entire time.
But even if he hadn't been, and it had simply been one-on-one, no safety anywhere near it, okay, I can get it. Like sometimes those are the shots where you take. It's predetermined. You're going to give your guy the benefit of the doubt that he's going to win during that route, and you're putting the ball in the air. But that wasn't single coverage. Like there was a guy there. So that was just, there's no reason that ball should have ever been put in the air. That's a read where if you're checking to see if that's on, you look up, you see the safety, you immediately come off it and you go somewhere else. But Jones is in this rut now where it feels like he just takes these, like I haven't taken a deep shot for a while. I need to put one in the air. I can't become this guy who just operates within the 10-yard area in front of me. That That's not good.
That's not good.
It's not good.
All right, so, man, the Bills, they're the number 2 seed. They're going to host the Miami Dolphins next week. Let's get to this Dolphins game. 11-6. I misspoke on the daily yesterday, our instant reaction. I called it 9-6. I forgot about the late safety on the laterals to let Miami cover.
I was talking to Ben Stockwell during the games. And, Miami kicks the late field goal to go up 9-6 in this, enticing back and forth battle here. And then he goes, how did the game end 11-6? The pitchy woo play? It went bad, really bad for the Jets.
Still another time, another team that needs you as a consultant.
Oh, who? The Titans. The Titans broke out.
We forgot to talk about the play. They
broke out what looked like the worst design play in the history of intentional laterals in like the first quarter, wasn't it? It was early.
It was 3rd and 12 or something. It was 3rd and long.
Yeah. Where Traylon Burks tries to offload in the tackle and actually ends up completing it to guy, only it went forward, so it's illegal. It's actually the exact same play that the Dallas Cowboys used whenever they went through that run where they used like a bunch of these in pretty short order. It's the exact play. Like I have it drawn up on a whiteboard in my office. I have like half a dozen of these plays from the last couple of years. It's the exact same play. The difference is the coverage. So whereas Dallas ran it against somebody, Seattle maybe, who were playing zone, like Seattle is wont to do, and therefore there was a lot of wide open spaces underneath where people are giving you essentially the early catch, playing off, then rallying to the football. The Jags effectively were playing man coverage, so the backside corner drove on the shallow cross and like nailed Traylon Burks before he had a chance to draw anybody and do anything with the ball. And therefore, so the play was dead from the outset. What I don't understand is why he then went, well, let's give it a shot anyway. How bad could this go?
I mean, it goes back to what we said about like when you give the receiver the ball on a reverse, they're not used to making quick decisions on where to throw and when to throw.
Yeah, but
right? They're just like, the play is throw the ball, receiver reverse. The play is throw the lateral. Sure, I'm getting tackled, but I can do this.
But if you can this is what I don't understand. How it's a simple yes or no, go or no go call, right? If you, as a receiver, are entrusted with the ability to like adjust your route versus the coverage you're reading, how can you not like take a look up and go, this is dead. I can't make this play. You've already caught the ball
play against a squat corner.
But it's not like it. So a difference between that and the kind of wide receiver pass option thing is if that's dead, it can be dead quite bad. If you can't make the throw, you can be 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage with guys bearing down on you. There are not many good options. This one, if you can't make the throw, just eat the 5-yard gain. Like, it's a good play. It's fine. Don't do that.
Are we done with Jags Titans now?
Now we are.
Back to the Dolphins game. It was 11-6. The pitchy woo woo, is that what you called it?
That's Chris Berman labeled it that once upon a time.
Oh.
So that's what people call it.
Oh, well, that ended in a safety. But it was your quintessential 9-6 game that gets the Dolphins into the playoffs.
Glorious.
And Joe Flacco got the start for the Jets. When we were picking the game, we didn't know. Mike White was
Joe Flacco against Skylar Thompson.
With the playoffs on the line.
With the playoffs on the line.
The Dolphins' offense was not all that effective. They ran the ball pretty well. The pass game was just out of sync across the board. A lot of throwaways for Skylar Thompson in this game. Under 5 yards per attempt. Tyreek Hill leaves the game with an ankle injury. And, I mean, my biggest takeaway now is mostly just looking forward, right? Is Tua Tagovailoa going to come back and play? Teddy Bridgewater has the broken finger. He could barely throw the ball this week. Is there something you could do to heal that in a week?
I mean, Brett Favre would have resined his fingers up and just gone out there,
Well, we need Teddy Bridgewater to at least do that, because if Skylar Thompson goes into Buffalo next week, there's two very enticing on-paper matchups. If you said 4 weeks ago, Dolphins, Bills, Ravens, Bengals, you'd say, all right, this is AFC playoff picture is loaded. But if it's Skylar Thompson and Tyler Huntley going out there, then it's less attractive.
Huntley at best. Like, it wasn't even Huntley this
Or
week.
Anthony Brown. I mean, yeah. I don't know if Brown is just being whatever. It could be bad.
Yeah, I mean, you go back, the Dolphins are coming into this playoff run on the back of 1-5 in the last. They had a collapse almost as bad as the Titans, and yet they actually scraped in because of this last win. That's not good. Like, when you're looking at the sort of potential AFC playoff scenarios and who's going to get in for that final wild card spot, it's like theoretically Miami is the most interesting team that can make the playoffs, because if they get a viable quarterback in this offense, we've already seen it can do absolute insane damage to anybody. But Tua has had 3 concussions this year, and everyone just assumes they're not going to put him back out there. Now, I think that becomes a very difficult question for them if the doctors clear him and they say, actually, there's no medical reason he can't be out there. And now they go, well, oh, God. Anyway, I'm not like 100% sure that they wouldn't put him back out there if the doctors if they put the onus back on Miami. Teddy Bridgewater with the injury, and then Skylar Thompson. Like, it theoretically it's good, but in reality it might be miserable. Whereas the opposite was true with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was another team that could have made it. It's like, Kenny Pickett, this Matt Canada offense, is like, God, nobody really wants to see that. On the other hand, Pittsburgh is the team playing best at the moment, and
their D's better with TJ Watt and everything.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, it might not be mind-blowing, but Kenny Pickett is actually playing pretty well at the moment. He's, giving his receivers a chance. Like, it's probably as good as it's going to get. Like, it's better than Skylar Thompson trying to do whatever facsimile of this offense he can muster.
I'm hoping we can at least see Bridgewater next week for the Dolphins.
Yeah.
I have no idea what ends up happening with the Tua situation. I won't speculate. I want to give a shout-out to Jalen Phillips for the Dolphins. Another really good game rushing the passer. He's going to finish the season, by our count, 10 sacks. By the NFL's count, 8. But
sack thing is fascinating this year, by the way. The regular sacks versus half sacks thing. Myles Garrett, Nick Bosa, and somebody else, Judon maybe, all sacked the quarterback 19 times. 3 of them have completely different official sack totals.
19 by our numbers?
They have each sacked the quarterback 19 times.
Yeah.
But the 3 people have completely different overall sack totals.
Just during your all-pro research here?
No, it was I was trying to figure out the bet tally. I was looking how many sacks Trey Hendrickson had. And I just had the season totals.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, Phillips had a nice game. They're going to need him playoff time to get some pressure here next week against the Bills.
I mean, that defense played very well.
Defense did play well.
Obviously, it's easier to play well when you're playing Joe Flacco, but the defense did play very well. Garrett Wilson had a great game for the Jets. He seemed like the only person interested in productive offense for them.
He also had 17 of their 32 targets.
Yeah, huge. There was a play where he broke like 3 or 4 tackles on one play, where he got led into a sandwich of a tackle, busted out of that, and then ducked through another one, and was on his way to like some massive yards after the catch, except after all that incredible work, then kind of stumbled over. But incredible play by him. The real difference in this game, honestly, was really one drive, maybe 2, where Raheem Mostert decided to just pick up a bunch of yards by himself.
Yep.
It's like there's a couple of productive plays to be made here, and then I'm going to double the production of the plays by just running really hard. So Raheem Mostert, I don't think he ended up leading the team in rushing yards. I think Jeff Wilson did, but like he picked up on a couple of drives in particular some really hard rushing yards, which kind of put them into position and gave them the lead.
Yeah, they combined for over 140 yards, Wilson and Mostert together. So, look, Dolphins finish at 9-8. They get the bid for the number 7 seed here, which didn't exist before last year, by the way. It didn't. But Dolphins are going to go to Buffalo this week. Are they the Sunday at 1 game? I believe it's Sunday at 1.
One other thing here.
Likely on CBS.
There's a few times this year, and this might be partly because of the quarterback, but the Jets managed to survive a play where as much as the offense is kind of tailed off and isn't doing what it did earlier in the season, they are still dialing up incredibly favorable matchups on the reg. At one point, the Jets survived a play where Quincy Williams, linebacker, number 56, right, is covering Tyreek Hill deep down the field one-on-one at the goal line and ends up getting a pass breakup in one of those plays where the pass breakup is you sprinting for all your life towards the wide receiver who's busy burning you, and the ball basically hits you in the back of the head because you've done this as it arrives, right? It's like, okay, very good, nice play, incredibly lucky. Like for, you come out of that game that play as the Jets sort of defensive coaches, and half of you is like, great job, like applauding your defender, and the other half is like, whew, dodged a bullet in that one. Like, we had a linebacker running one-on-one with Tyreek Hill down the field and did not give up a touchdown.
You dropped an on the reg.
Huh. Well, I figured you've broken the barrier now for the cool talk.
Yeah.
You can dive right in.
Just saying. Sauce Gardner was banged up in the game. He did end up coming back. He's going to finish the season with a 90-plus coverage grade and a forced incompletion percentage of 28%, meaning he broke up 28% of the targets into his coverage. Sauce should be the defensive rookie of the year, but Aiden Hutchinson was making a play on Sunday Night Football because what did he end up with? 9.5 official sacks, I think, Hutchinson.
He's like
9.5 sacks and 3 interceptions. Somebody's going to look at the stat sheet and vote for Hutch, but it should be Sauce Gardner.
He really should. Actually, Aiden Hutchinson, if we were just talking about the second half of the year, Aiden Hutchinson might be right up there in the.
Yeah, I'm not taking anything away from him. I just don't want people to just look at those 13 plays and say, well, he must be the guy.
Aiden Hutchinson apparently has like 3 or 4 ridiculously specific and coincidental statistical quirks that people are going to use to construct a defensive rookie of the year candidacy. Like, there was the one where he was the only player in the NFL with like whatever it was, 8 sacks and 3 interceptions or something. Then apparently he's the only player, or one of only 3 players in NFL history to have multiple games with an interception and a fumble recovery or something ridiculous. He's the only player in NFL history to do it twice in a single season. But it's like fumble recoveries are basically blind ass luck. Like, this is not a wow. He's the only guy that's ever done that. That's record breaking. Therefore, it's the greatest thing we've ever seen. It's like, no, it's just because it's such a random thing that it hasn't happened yet until this.
It's also because there's only 4 defensive stats, and people need something. You have tackles, you have sacks, you have interceptions, you have 5 stats.
Yeah.
Forced fumbles and fumble recoveries.
I would simply ask.
Those are the stats we've had.
When you're coming up with a statistical case like that, I would ask, like, how hard are you having to work to find this stat? Like, how difficult was it to discover this particular record? Because it sounds like it was quite a challenge.
We have people that can't even add the context of 17-game schedule and how much that affects counting stats and records, and you want them to not overreact to these cherry-picked stats.
I just want, like, again, like if
Miami won.
It's really hard, the amount of work you appear to be doing to find a random stat that this guy is leading the league in. I think that probably, like, look, Aiden Hutchinson, going back to this, I think for the second half of the year, you can make the case that Aiden Hutchinson is a defensive rookie of the year. I think when you consider that Sauce did that for all season, it's not close. Like, Sauce is the rookie of the year. Aiden Hutchinson gave him a run for his money in the second half of the season, and the only reason you would say it's Hutchinson over Sauce is if you're only interested in recency bias, and you're like, well, the first 8 games didn't happen. Okay, but they did, so,
Have you seen your fellow voters?
I'm making no disparaging. I know there were some exalted and impressive luminary names in that email chain that got sent to everybody.
And also Sam Monson.
Yeah, I don't want to name names in case they don't do it themselves. But there's some friends of the show on that list.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Jets have an interesting offseason too. So they fall to 7-10 after a very promising start. Very much in the playoff picture until they weren't.
Can you believe, by the way, that this was not scorigami? 11-6. No scorigami. That score has happened one time before.
That was the
January
NFC
23,
Championship.
2000.
Rams, Bucs. Would you let me finish the answer to your...
Would you let me finish the damn quote I was reading out?
I knew the scorigami. That was how the Rams beat the Bucs to get to the Super Bowl.
You still could have got there. I was only giving you the date.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the end
I
of
didn't
it.
even need it.
January 23rd, 2000.
This is a dark day.
It's a dark day.
Jags lost to the Titans 33-14 to not go to the playoffs. I did not go to the Super Bowl.
I would have bet money that 11-6 was a scorigami, but apparently not.
Yeah, I was thinking that, and then it did stick out. What a ridiculous NFC Championship game. The gauntlet is open for drafting over at Underdog Fantasy. It's a playoff best ball tournament with $1 million in total prizes and a $100,000 first place prize. Just draft your team before the NFL playoffs start, and that's it. Well, you got to do it this week then. The playoffs start Saturday, so go do it. Drafting players will rack up a bunch of fantasy points and advancing deep into the playoffs is key to this style of contest. If you haven't signed up for Underdog yet, use the promo code PFF, and you'll get a first deposit match up to $100. So go do that right now. Promo code's PFF, first deposit match up to $100. It's at Underdog Fantasy. It's the Gauntlet playoff best ball tournament with $1 million in total prizes. All right, the other game that had some AFC playoff implications, until it didn't, was the Steelers. 28-14 win over the Cleveland Browns. The implications that did matter, though, is Mike Tomlin, once again, not being a loser.
Not being a loser. Yeah.
9-8, the Steelers finished the season.
I mean,
I don't even want to analyze their roster every offseason, right? Oh, the Steelers are making some bad moves, and you can't draft Najee Harris in the first round. Doesn't matter. We're still going to finish 9-8. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, look, I was sort of torn, going through these games. By the way, I think CBS I think it was a CBS thing, but they had in the top left, they had this really nice touch of the 3 relevant games.
Yeah. And
they had the score for each of the 3 relevant games sort of on the screen at the whole time, which is something that was driving me insane in the World Cup this year, where, again, like you had 2 games going on simultaneously to determine who was going to go through in the group stages, and you didn't know what the hell the score was in the other game while the one you were watching was going on. You had to wait until the announcer would update you on what the hell was happening in the other game. Like, CBS fixed the problem. They had all 3 relevant games on the screen at the same time, so you could actually see who the hell was making it through to the wild card round.
You really couldn't solve that problem during the World Cup, huh?
Well, I could have solved the problem had I pulled up a phone or a laptop, but that's not a good user experience.
Gotcha. Oh, okay.
What I'm saying is, as a broadcaster,
so you're not saying it was insurmountable to know what was happening,
right? As a broadcaster who has seen this happen before, this wasn't the first World Cup. It feels like that was a problem you should have anticipated and solved with this particular fix, and CBS did.
No, it was good. It was a good touch. It was tough for me to see on my 8-box mix on DirecTV, and I had all the games in front of me anyway.
It's not easy being you.
I wasn't the end user on that, though.
You're going to feel like a real jackass, though, once the rest of the world pivots to YouTube TV. Now that you don't need
YouTube TV will have the 8-box.
Now that you don't need a satellite. Not only will they have an 8-box, right, but they will have one that doesn't have the giant bar across the bottom, so that you can actually use the full breadth of your television to see it.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
They will have the 8-box mix. If they don't, there's going to be issues.
Oh, they will. They've been talking about all kinds of trickery that they're going to be doing.
I can't wait.
The multiple options.
Anyway, I'm digging the satellite dish out today.
So I was torn between, I really wanted Mike Tomlin to get this win because it's just absurd that he's going to finish with a winning record, not just not a losing record, with this roster. On the other hand, I didn't really want to see the Steelers in the playoffs. Because I'm sorry, it just didn't interest me. The idea of Pittsburgh playing any of these good teams is not an interesting proposition to me.
Yeah, just because they're hot, I don't think it matters that they would I don't think they're going to Buffalo and challenging the Bills.
I mean, we've seen Miami beat the Bills. Okay, we've also seen them lose to the Bills. But there were 2 close games.
That was ages ago.
Yeah, but there were 2 close games, and I think Miami emerged from both of them with credit. I feel like Pittsburgh going to Buffalo now, even on this hot streak, they would just get whooped. And that's not interesting to me.
On the other side, so Steelers defense sacks Deshaun Watson 7 times. Deshaun Watson with one of his worst games as a pro. He's going to finish with a grade in the 30s. Since, here's a stat for you. Since the Cleveland media randomly declared Deshaun Watson has solved the cold, 3 weeks ago. Solved, right? Knows how to play in the cold weather here in Cleveland. Deshaun Watson has graded at 33 overall, PFF grade. And it was pretty bad for him this season. Throwing, fires passes into coverage yesterday, 2 interceptions, and just some concerns here probably for the Browns going forward with their quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, certainly this idea of their season, it's 11-game suspension, and then Watson comes back to save the day. I mean, okay, and then it became, let's think about this realistically. He's been out of the game for 2 years. He's probably going to have some rust to shake off at that point. Yeah, okay, you're right.
Give him a game or 2.
Yeah, it's going to take a couple of games of bad play, and then he'll be where we need him to be. Well, those first two games, that's exactly what happened. We had a 56 grade against Houston, and then we had a 57 grade against Cincinnati. But then he's fixed, right? That's the rust shaking off, and he takes 2 weeks. That's why we take a preseason for a couple of weeks. Well, since that point, it's been a 70 grade at 5.8 yards per attempt against Baltimore, and then a 69 grade with 4.4 yards per attempt against New Orleans, a 54 grade.
That was the solve the weather game.
Yes. Against Washington, it's been bad. Watson hasn't played well at any point. Not just not played well, but there have been a bunch of plays in each one of these games where you're like, have you ever played this game before? What are you doing?
Yeah, it was, we'll see. We don't see too many quarterbacks who miss over a year and a half.
He's going to come out of this season with a grade of 60-something, and Jacoby Brissett was at 80.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that's going to make for interesting times this offseason in Cleveland as well. It's
with this $230 million guaranteed dollars.
There's some similarities to the Russell Wilson thing where it's like the Browns have to just figure out how to make Deshaun Watson work.
Oh, yeah.
It's less.
The good news is he's 27 as opposed to 32,
right.
33 looking over the hill.
It's probably not a physical issue that's potential, not insurmountable, but a concern like Russell Wilson. But something to think about in Cleveland this offseason as they finished the season 7-10. Joe Woods, their defensive coordinator, has been fired this morning. The Week 18 or Week 17, formerly. Monday show is always interesting as
Black Monday.
Black Monday. I don't like it. I don't like Black Monday.
I don't like Black Monday.
People are getting fired, losing jobs.
Yeah, but they're rich people with guaranteed money. Think of it. This is like a lottery win for them.
Money's not everything, though.
You need
to
think
about families. They have kids. They have kids in school that they got to move.
And now they can spend more time with them.
No, because they're not going to. They're going to go where's my next job?
Is that my fault?
They're going to go to the next job.
The man's just been given gardening leave and millions of dollars.
They got to move their family.
You're telling it's not my fault that he's not going to spend it with his family.
Personally, I do want to get fired with a multi-million-dollar contract and a couple of years left.
That's what I'm saying.
This
is like Christmas for these people. They have just been given the gift of time with their family with millions of dollars. That's about as good as it gets.
Well, there you go.
The fact that they're going to throw it away or look the gift horse in the mouth and go and try and re-up somewhere else, that's not my fault. That's that's them.
Steelers moved to 9-8, and Kenny Pickett has, how you said Taylor Heineke has the most impressive, he's got the most wins when grading in the 50s. I think Kenny Pickett has the most impressive games where he can't crack 200 passing yards. That's been, we keep saying he's grading well, he's playing well, but it's still not a great offense in Pittsburgh. They ran the ball pretty effectively for much of the game. They fumbled at the goal line. They could have put a lot more points on the board.
That fumble was weird, by the way. It looked like, you see those plays where the running back takes a flying leap and kind of launches himself into a linebacker.
Yeah.
And it looked like the pop from the linebacker punched the ball right out of there. I'm not sure it even needed the contact from the linebacker for the ball to come out. Najee went and leapt and sort of on the way up was losing the ball. And then once he ran into a linebacker, obviously that solved led to the inevitable conclusion. But he was losing that before the guy nailed him.
Yeah, weird play. Will be interesting to see what they do in Pittsburgh this offseason. Matt Canada been somewhat on the hot seat, especially with Pittsburgh media, and it doesn't feel like they create offense that effectively, but they've got good offensive players, right? So we'll see what they end up doing there in Pittsburgh this offseason, but they finished the year.
This game
9-8
had some obnoxious officiating. Deshaun Watson at one point got tackled by his face, no penalty. Like one of the clearest face mask penalties you'll ever see in your life. The guy literally grabbed hold of the face, and then dragged him down by it, and somehow they didn't see that. Okay, fine. Somehow you missed it. I can believe that. Then Cameron Hayward sacks Deshaun Watson, throws him to the ground, and gets roughing the passer flagged on him. Now, at this point in the game, Watson had spent the majority of the game so far breaking away from tackles, getting out of pretty serious contact and getting away. So you can't be you got to be he was in the grasp. The play's over. You got to let up on him. Cameron Hayward had to finish the play. which involves getting the quarterback to the ground. Now, if you're telling me you can't jump on him, well, then all I can really do is to throw him to the ground. Like, it's the most routine.
It wasn't that egregious of a throw either.
No, it was nothing. It was a sack. It was a sack against a guy who spent an entire game breaking out of pretty solid tackles and making plays in spite of that. Like, if that's a penalty, then just put flags or red jerseys on the quarterback and say you can't touch him. If it isn't, then it's a makeup call for the fact that you missed the worst face mask penalty you're going to see.
Do you think makeup calls are somewhat intentional or just a matter of human nature? Like, you screwed up and you're just kind of like looking for ways to resolve it? Don't answer that. We don't have time. But it is interesting to me because, it was pretty close, those two plays. Blatant face mask missed. And these are big plays. This is what I'm saying. Like, the defensive pass interference calls that are like 40-yard spot fouls and face masks that are 15 yards and automatic first downs. When you screw those up, those change the course of the game.
That's why I hope they're not intentional makeup calls, because the situation is never the same. You can't just like fix it later on. Like, these are massive individual down and distance moments.
You can't compound the errors, right?
Well, you can't fix the error with a different mistake later on because the situations are different.
All right, let's move on. Cincinnati Bengals 27, Baltimore Ravens 16. The other AFC game that had some level of playoff implications. The Bengals lock up the number 3 seed. They lock up the right to not have a coin toss with the Ravens. So they're definitely going to be.
This whole thing was always silly. Like, okay, the idea that Cincinnati and Baltimore were ever flipping a coin for anything was bizarre because there's like 15 different ways you could have separated the two teams with things other than a coin flip.
Well, here's the thing that was interesting to me is they wanted to do it because had the Ravens won, they wouldn't have the better win percentage, but they would have had a chance to win the division had the Bengals-Bills game happened, right? Yeah. The thing that people in Cincinnati here, our home city, are very upset about is that the Bengals and Bills don't have a coin toss for the number 2 seed. Right. Because if the Bengals had won the other night, they would be the 2 seed. They didn't have – the NFL, I thought, did as well as they could to say, if you had a chance for something better, we're going to do something.
I mean, we talked about this at the time, that there was no good outcome to this. The fact that game was not going to be played left the NFL in an impossible situation where the only thing available was a series of bad solutions. So pick your favorite bad solution. Even with that particular context, I think they did about as bad a job as you could possibly have done with the solution they ended up with. Like, if you're going to flip a coin for anything, just flip a coin for who won Cincinnati-Buffalo and move on. That fixes everything. They didn't do that.
I thought they did fine.
No, it was terrible. They were focused
neutral
only
site games.
The only thing they were focused on was the home field advantage, which is the least consequential advantage to come from this. Like, the thing that they never had any interest in addressing is the fact that somebody is about to get a week off and not have to play a game. That's by far the biggest advantage available in this whole shit show, is the fact that Kansas City doesn't have to play next week. They have a free week where they can't get dumped from the playoffs. And at no point were they interested in solving that. Anyway, even if you're saying that there was a chance where Baltimore could have won the division but for that game, okay, fine. But just pick a statistic to separate the two teams. Baltimore at that point, had they won yesterday, would have been 2-0 head-to-head against Cincinnati. So give them the division. Or they would have been 4-2 versus 2-4, I think, in the division. Give them the division. Or Cincinnati would have been ahead on, point differential or net touchdowns or whatever. There's 15 different statistical ways you could have separated them. Coin flip is an asinine solution. But also, by the way, it's an asinine solution to a problem that was never going to exist because the Ravens are going to start Anthony Brown at quarterback, and therefore the Bengals were always going to win this game.
Which they did, 27-16. And they'll play each other again next week. And if it's Tyler Huntley or Anthony Brown, it's not very attractive as a game. If Lamar Jackson shows up to play, then it is a good game. Lamar hasn't practiced in over a month. Even if he plays, what are they going to get from Lamar Jackson at this point with the knee injury?
Do you think so the Ravens don't seem to know anything about him. Like, they're like, we don't know what his status is, which seems weird for, like, it's a knee injury, right? It's not like he's the thing of, well, you always say it's a back spasm because there's no actual way of testing for that, right? It's like your calf injury.
Yeah.
It's fake, but there's no real way of telling. So it feels like you should have a pretty good grasp over where a guy is when he has a knee injury. Like that's, the medical staff feels like they should be on top of that one. So the fact that the Ravens keep saying we don't really know what his status is that him being like, pay me, otherwise I'm not that interested in getting back on the field?
There might be something there.
But if there is, does that change once you're in the postseason? Like, I'm making a point here, but if there's playoff games to be won and there's a Super Bowl 4 games away, I'm kind of back in,
I would think Lamar Jackson would want to play in the playoffs.
Same.
Unless he really is that hurt that, your point last week or whatever it was that like, hey, Baker Mayfield shouldn't have played hurt last year. It hurt him. Does Lamar want to go out there injured and look bad? Either way, I mean, again, even if he's healthy.
But again, I think that would change.
You haven't thrown with your teammates or anything over the last few weeks. That's tough to come back from in a week.
I just find it very strange that we're still talking about, I don't know if he's back. Like, I get that for the regular season. I don't
remember
get
he was day-to-day to season. Was it him or Fields that was day-to-day?
Fields was day-to-day for the rest of the year.
Nick Wright, I saw like a montage of Nick Wright, friend of the show, going through the timeline. And it was basically since week 14 or 15, whatever the week was, hey, Lamar might come back. He's out this week. He might be back next week.
Right.
He's out this week. He might be back next week. It was like 5 weeks of that. So that is the Ravens either miscalculating or really just not knowing. And at some point, Lamar just saying, I'm not healthy. I'm not healthy. But there was some little statements like, John Harbaugh saying, I coach the healthy players. I coach who's here. And that's coach speak. I don't think that's a jab. But there's also probably kernels of truth there where they're saying, like, if he's saying he's not healthy, he's not healthy. He's not on the team. He's not ready to go.
I think it makes a lot of sense that he was not going to be available for the rest of the regular season because I think Baltimore was almost always going to get to the playoffs. Like, there's no point in risking him. But I find it curious that it wasn't an automatic that, he's going to be back for the playoff game. Like, as soon as we hit the playoffs, Lamar's back. We're still like, I don't know. I mean, maybe. Who knows? That seems strange.
But if you're just the Ravens, you would want Lamar Jackson playing in this Week 18 game because of this coin flip thing. Like, you'd rather be at home.
You would, but it's like I wouldn't rather risk Lamar Jackson re-aggravating whatever. Or I would rather him have the extra week of rest than play in this game, which probably isn't going to make a difference to anything. Like, all it does is adjust seating or whatever. I don't care. Well,
I hope he's back. The Ravens offense has not looked good without Lamar Jackson. Bengals were interesting. Joe Burrow missed a bunch of throws in this one, and they also he missed T. Higgins wide open, but he also hits T. Higgins with a bomb, and Higgins dropped it. It felt like I know Darryl Worley was out there playing corner for the first time all season for the Ravens, but it felt like one of those games where, like, the Bengals dropped back. He had 42 attempts, Burrow, and remember last year he had these monster games where he was throwing 450, 500 yards. Felt like one of those games where that was on the table, but the Bengals just kept missing, right? Whether it was Burrow, whether it was the receivers. There was another one where he hit Jamar Chase in the end zone in the hands with a tight window throw. If the Ravens play coverage the way they did in this game, next week, we could be looking at the Bengals scoring 40, and if they can connect on a couple of these plays, right? But Burrow was a little off. The receivers were a little off. T. Higgins took a monster hit at one point in this game, and we'll see. But the Bengals had some big opportunities for plays here. Didn't really matter. They win 27-16, lock up the division, which we already knew, but they finished the year 12-4.
David Ojabo got his first sack. I think it was a strip sack as well, right? Sack, forced fumble. Remember, David Ojabo tore his Achilles at his pro day, which is like, mid-March. So we're less than a year out from him completely tearing his Achilles at the start of the early beginnings of his draft process, slipping in the draft because of it, gets back, barely plays, gets on the field late on, and the guy gets his first NFL sack in the final regular season game. Just like crazy. I mean, incredible recovery for him. Like, fantastic seeing him get back and make an impact.
All right, so it was. Should be a good game next week. Ravens and Bengals. Always fun when the same teams play. Last week of the regular season, then first week of the playoffs as well. What else do we have here in this 1 o'clock window? Nothing good, I don't think. Let's touch on Denver 31, Chargers 28, staying with the AFC theme here. So Broncos win, salvaging their season to 5-12. Chargers lose 10-7. They fall to 10-7. The Chargers, this game happened at 4:00. The only thing that the Chargers could have been playing for in this game was securing the 5 seed. And nothing against the Jags, but I think the 5 seed is the most coveted wild card spot this year with the Chiefs, Bills, and Bengals at the top. And so you want to be the 5 seed because you're going to play the Jags. Again, nothing against them, but they're probably an easier team than the Bengals, who finished with the 3 seed. But we already knew, because the 1:00 games already happened, we already knew that the Chargers were locked into the 5 seed. Mm-hmm. And they still went and played their players. And the big story coming out of this one, Mike Williams with a back injury that they're calling, Sam, back spasms, as you said. Didn't look good coming off the card, coming off the field, everything. But a source told some reporter that he'll be fine. Either way, a lot of questions for Brandon Staley, why he played all of his starters. Justin Herbert dropped back over 40 times. Keenan Allen played the majority of the game. The great Chase Daniel didn't come in until very late.
Yes. The Week 18 thing now used to be Week 17, but the decision of how much of your starters do you play, when you rest people, how much you rest them, all those kinds of things. It's heading into the playoffs with some momentum versus risking injury is always an interesting decision. I think the league generally in the last several years is pivoting more and more away from these guys need to play and more towards it's not worth the risk if ever there's a risk to be taken. And for example, we saw a team like the Giants yesterday who were in a very similar situation to the Chargers. At this point, we got nothing to play for, so nobody's playing. And they rested everybody. They didn't even risk their backup quarterback. They were playing Davis Webb at quarterback, not Tyrod Taylor. They didn't play anybody of consequence. Like every important player for the Giants was not playing in that game, to the point where Kenny Golladay got a great run at receiver for the first time all year. So the Giants essentially went out there and showed, look, you can. This was a preseason game for them. The Chargers, who by the way play nobody in the preseason. So think of your favorite Charger player. The chances are he took 0 preseason snaps.
It's an LA thing. They
played everybody in this game for almost the entire game. Justin Herbert played 55 snaps. Corey Linsley, who's dealt with injuries this year at center, played 55 snaps. Keenan Allen, who's dealt with injuries, 51 snaps. Mike Williams played 25 snaps before he left the game with a back injury. They played everybody in this game and lost several of them during the game to injury, albeit some guys who came back. Joey Bosa, who's dealt with injury all season long, played a ton of this game. How much did he play before he went out? He played 20 snaps in this game. And then, so people are losing their minds, being like, why is Justin Herbert still in this game? There's nothing to play for. What are we gaining from this? Brandon Staley comes out after the game to answer this. And look, if he come out and said, we feel that there is value to be had from gaining momentum, from getting the reps, from staying sharp, from entering the playoffs in a role, that's the most important thing to us right now. Okay, fine. I disagree. I think you're wrong, but that's a decision I can respect. Brandon Staley comes out and answers this question by saying, quote, there's only 48 guys that you can choose from, and these aren't easy decisions. Hindsight is perfect for everybody on the outside, but these games are not easy to manage. They're not, because you don't have that many players. We did it to the best of our ability. That is an absurd explanation for this, particularly when the Giants have just shown you that you can execute a game with none of your important players on it. The Giants had exactly the same constraints and went out there without risking anybody of consequence. And the Chargers are like, well, there's only 48 guys. We had to have Justin Herbert out there for 55 snaps.
There's kernels of truth in there.
There's no truth to that. It's a mad statement.
You can't literally sit every starter. You can absolutely sit your most
The Giants
significant
sat,
players.
I think, every single starter except Evan Neal.
You can't sit every significant player. I mean, your biggest players you can.
Look through the Giants game yesterday and tell me which players they had that were of significance.
I would buy the we want to stay sharp. I do think there is an actual discussion to be had there. And I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer. And I think the difference between this and the preseason is with the preseason, you're about to get into this 17-game schedule. You don't have to be as sharp as possible for week one. You want to get through the season healthy, right? You have to be sharp next week. And if there's something that tells you, if I play my guys this week for 3 quarters, 3.5 quarters, we'll be better next week, right or wrong, I understand that reasoning. The reasoning of there's no possible way to not play Justin Herbert and all my highest impact players, that's obviously false. As you mentioned, the Giants, people can do it. You can't sit every single starter and every player that plays over 30 snaps per game, but you can get most of them. You can get Herbert, you can get Bosa, you can get Keenan Allen, and all the injuries that they've dealt with. If the Chargers don't have Mike Williams, it's a different offense, right? If they don't have, and we've seen that this season, it's a different offense when you don't have the entire supporting cast there for Justin Herbert.
So the Giants are the obvious counter to that statement. The other obvious team to compare them to are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who again didn't really have anything to play for. But so here's the thing. When you're looking at these teams and you're like, what is the single most important defining characteristic of this team or that team? The single most defining characteristic for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this season has been the complete and total lack of any cohesion on offense. And this is a team that desperately wants to try and find some spark or rhythm or sharpness or all these things that we're talking about as the reason to play these starters. So they played their starters in this game and they gave them almost the first half. And then they got everybody out of there, right? Tom Brady played, 30 snaps or something in this game, played almost the first half. And then Tom Brady sat his ass on the bench while Blaine Gabbert went out there and took some snaps. And then Kyle Trask took some snaps. And important players were not risked. And, guys like Kyle Rudolph are getting some game time. Or Brashad Perriman ends up being one of their leading receivers. These are the things, right? Because we get the important guys out of there. We try and get some rhythm, some momentum going. And then we abandon this because it's not worth it. And we get the hell out of there. The Chargers, they're not in the same boat as Tampa Bay in terms of desperately needing to find this offensive spark. B, their single most defining characteristic for the last 15 years has been health. Who is injured and who are we about to lose that's going to torpedo the season for us? Mike Williams, we've already established this year, is a pretty important part of this offense with a fairly extensive injury history. The idea that he played a snap in this game is ridiculous. Joey Bosa, very similar idea. Joey Bosa has been banged up this whole year. He's a game changer for this defense. What the hell is he doing out there at any point in the game? The fact that they risked those guys and lost them during the game is absolutely inexcusable, even if they'd had a good explanation for it, which they didn't.
The one thing that our live fact checker, Ben Stockwell, does mention, for this 4 o'clock game, the Chargers did have to declare their inactives while they didn't know the outcome of Bengals-Ravens.
Which is also an absurd excuse that someone else gave me, because who cares?
Now, that's a handful of players. You absolutely could have thrown Chase Daniel out there. You could have thrown your biggest star, your stars easily could have sat.
But also, at the point where you're abandoning the game as inconsequential, it doesn't matter what you're left with. They dressed 4 wide receivers for this game, which in itself is a question to be asked, right? But let's say, okay, we're going to sit 3 of those 4 receivers. What does that leave you with? Well, who cares? You've already declared the game is pointless. Line up some offensive linemen at wide receiver and run the plays.
22 personnel. Let's go. Anyway, I think they were questionable decisions. I can buy staying sharp. I don't know if there's enough data out there to say, should you play, should you not play? What's the injury risk obviously is massive, even more so for the Chargers. So that's the biggest story coming out of this game. The one other thing was the Broncos offense looked good, whether, for whatever that's worth. And Russell Wilson to Jerry Jeudy, five catches for $154 for Jerry Jeudy.
It only took 18 weeks, but finally we saw the Russ to Jerry Jeudy connection.
Take a little bit of the pressure off, a little coaching change, and Russ can turn back the clock in no time here. I mean, he looked – the stats were great. He didn't look as good as the stats, 13 of 24 for 283, almost 12 yards per attempt and 3 scores. And
there were a couple of plays in there that looked vintage Russ.
Absolutely.
Where the one, the deep bomb to Jerry Jeudy where he's rolling out to the left. That was a Seahawks play. You pull that right out of any year of a Seahawks tape. Vintage Russell Wilson, running to the left. He's always been an incredibly good quarterback at being able to roll to his wrong side, his left-hand side, Where there's a lot of quarterbacks that when they're rolling that, they need to like completely come to a stop, set their feet, and then be able to. Russell Wilson's able to kind of do that on the run, that fluid throwing motion thing. There aren't that many quarterbacks that can do that. He's always been outstanding at that. And this was a play that like you haven't seen that much of that this year, and to the point where you're wondering, is that still in his playbook? And apparently it is.
Before Russ took that big step forward in 2020, I used to describe his career as similar to what I used to say about Stafford, right? There's 3 or 4 games per year where Russell Wilson plays like a top 3 quarterback. And then he started to get more consistent. For about a year and a half, he was far more consistent. And he started to lose some of the bad games, right? But this season, he's going to grade in the 70s in this, solid game. He doesn't have a grade above 83 this entire season, right? There was no game where he just lit it up. He used to do that 3 or 4 times a year, right? So that's where I think, the totality of the season was obviously not good. He's going to finish with a 66 overall grade. It's the worst of his career. Every stat's the worst of Russell Wilson's career. Mm-hmm. And of all the concerns that you have this year, I don't know which one's the biggest. But is the biggest one the fact that there's flashes here and there. He had this one throw here, and he broke a tackle here and there. But there's not 3 or 4 games where he just takes over like he used to, where he is out of this world. And if he doesn't have that in the toolbox, then you're relying on consistency. And that's never really been Russell Wilson's game. And that might be the biggest story this offseason for whether it's Sean Payton that they're already talking to in Denver. How are you going to get either Russell Wilson more consistent or unlock some of the greatness? Russ did assure us, though. 2023 season starts today. Today. Russ is back at it.
Well, it is 2023, so yeah. I guess that makes sense.
His season starts today.
I mean, so the larger the sample size, I think the stronger the PFF grades are. And over an entire season, the sample size is pretty large. Russell Wilson's PFF grade for the season is going to be 66.2 with a 64.5 passing grade, which ranks him below Marcus Mariota, Derek Carr, busted Matthew Stafford, Kyler Murray, Bailey Zappi, Mac Jones, Justin Fields, Teddy Bridgewater, Jimmy G. A lot of bad quarterbacks or bad seasons from quarterbacks. Like Russell Wilson this year has been pretty catastrophic. I mean, that's the biggest concern, is that you were just terrible this year.
Yeah, I'm trying to increase that sample size because it's not just this year. You made the good point. But if you go back to the middle of 2020, and now you're talking almost 2 full seasons, and we missed some time in there, his passing grade is... where the heck is it now? 73. It's not very good. It's right in Daniel Jones territory. That bet we lost, by the way. The person that said Daniel Jones would grade higher than Russell Wilson.
No, he didn't even say higher. He said within 3 points of. Even he couched it in the terms as to believe that like Russell Wilson, of course, will grade better than Daniel Jones, but Jones will be closer.
Well, he wins that bet. Mm-hmm. The NFL playoff picture is locked in, and my go-to place for wildcard round action is DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. To kick off the road to Super Bowl 57, new customers can bet just $5 and get $200 in free bets instantly. Plus, all new and existing customers can get a no-sweat bet each day of wildcard round this weekend. That's 3 straight days. Don't forget, it's Super Wildcard Weekend. Just place any NFL bet of your choice, and if it loses, you'll get a free bet back up to $10. Action so good, why bet NFL playoffs anywhere else? So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code PFF. New customers can bet $5 on the NFL and get $200 in free bets instantly. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with the code PFF. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. All right, let's go through the NFC games, and then we'll talk draft implications and games that didn't matter. How's that sound? Philadelphia. Line Storm Norton up. I see your notes. Philadelphia wins 22-16 over the New York Giants. We just mentioned how the Giants didn't really play anyone. They played Davis Webb with his first NFL start for Webb. I forgot that. Didn't they declare him the starter that one time?
No, so you screwed it up before when we were talking about benching Eli Manning, the Ben McAdoo thing. It wasn't for Davis Webb. It was for Geno.
Oh, it was for Geno Smith. I thought, okay, I just screwed it up. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So Davis Webb gets his first NFL start, and the Eagles needed to win this game to secure the number 1 seed. Jalen Hurts makes his return. He looked really rusty as well. He did have a touchdown taken off the board, throws an interception in the end zone on the very next play, I believe it was. little rust here from Jalen Hurts. I think ultimately maybe that was a good thing to get him back out there. But either way, the Eagles win 22-16. They pretty much had the game in hand. The Giants with the old backdoor cover here in the late in the game. Eagles moved to 14-3, and we'll see them again in 2 weeks.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts took a lot of hits in this game, and they weren't like offensive line hits. It wasn't because that offensive line was getting wrecked by the Giants' backups. Even on the face of it, that doesn't sound like a very likely outcome. Jack Driscoll, who's been the sort of problem at right tackle since Lane Johnson went down, was okay in this game. The rest of the offensive line was good. So, like, Jalen Hurts was just taking hits in this game in a way that is not that beneficial.
He took 3 sacks for 22 yards, had a few 9 more carries, a lot of short yardage type stuff in there. But like one of the sacks was basically a failed RPO where Hurts wasn't able to get rid of the ball. Those are tricky. If you don't throw the ball right off the RPO, you pretty much have to run for your life, because if you throw it, it's going to be illegal man downfield.
Giants, of course, continued the psychotic blitz rate despite the entire defensive backups.
You run your scheme, man. You run your scheme. A.J. Brown, of course, 37-yarder. And again, not to take anything away from Hurts, but there's been a lot of passes this year where it's like, it's not necessarily the best deep ball in the world. It's literally just a jump ball, a 50-50 ball that A.J. Brown just wins. He just continues to create offense that isn't there.
Yeah, at one point he was on his way to a Randy Moss type of stat line. It was like 2 catches for 70-something yards.
Yeah.
You've had a chance now to peruse the snap counts for this game. Have you found me a Giants player of consequence that played any number of snaps that isn't Evan Neal?
No, I haven't been perusing, so
okay.
let me go peruse.
You do that, yeah, because I don't think you're going to find much in this game. For example, Jared Davis played 69 snaps on defense for them.
Get him some reps.
Yeah, you got to really see what you have in Jared Davis in this type of game.
Why don't you, while I'm perusing, I'm trying to, because I went and
trying to get in there.
I lost my Week 18 filter here.
Well, Kenny Golladay finally tied the great Andrew Thomas for receiving touchdowns for the Giants since he was handed a $72 million contract.
Yeah, one of the most amazing stories this season is that the Giants' leading receivers were Darius Slayton, Richie James, and Isaiah Hodgins, while their monster free agent pickup, Kenny Golladay, did nothing. And their former first-round pick, Kadarius Toney, looks good with the Chiefs. Right? Like, that's a disastrous team-building effort in a vacuum. On one hand, you got good return from those unheralded guys. On the other hand, your biggest investments as a team, and I know it was a different regime and all that stuff, but your biggest investments as a team are either on the bench or somewhere else.
Kenny Golladay had 10 targets in the first 17 weeks of the season and 7 targets yesterday from Davis Webb. Now, in the tragedy that is Kenny Galladay's
what is Ultimate doing?
Career,
screwing up right
talk now. Talk to the product manager. In the tragedy that is Kenny Galladay's Giants career, of those 7 targets, he caught 2 of them. 5 of them were contested, and he caught 1 of them. I mean, Kenny Golladay is like a walking cautionary tale for why you don't focus on contested catch guys, because if that suddenly starts to swing in the opposite direction, the guy's left with nothing.
What a catch that was, though, yesterday.
Right, but that's just 1 contested catch. So 5 contested catches, he caught 1 of them. That was it. Outside of that, you're you caught 1 of 6 for 30 for whatever many yards that is. Not many. Just a disaster of an acquisition. Have you managed to load up your crappy product yet?
Evan, we got it. Evan Neal had 33 snaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. What else you got?
Yeah, that's it.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Now, the Giants had the benefit of being able to elevate practice squad guys before the game and everything.
So what you're telling me.
They knew the entire week they didn't have to play. The Chargers didn't know that they had to.
So what you're telling me is you can, in fact, rest everybody of consequence.
The Giants had an advantage there.
Uh-huh.
But you could have
rested everybody.
Could have rested most people. Yeah. Most. Uh-huh. Not everybody, but most.
No, you're right. You would have, in fact, had to play your version of Evan Neal. Jamari Sawyer would have had to have been out there all game. Everyone else could have sat.
Rookie reps are good. Jalen Hurts is going to finish with his worst grade of the season. If this had happened coming off of no injury, you would say, is this just a a little regression from Jalen Hurts? Because we're talking about a guy that's played at a top 5 level this year, and that was not expected coming into the season. Even the biggest Jalen Hurts fans aren't like, yeah, this year is going to be Allen, Mahomes, Burrow, and then Hurts is going to be right there in the mix. I don't think you were expecting that. So is there concern, or is it literally just he's coming off injury, didn't play for a few weeks? We've seen Deshaun Watson a little rusty. We see these other quarterbacks rusty when they miss time. Tua had a rough game when he was coming off of missing a couple weeks earlier this year. This is commonplace for a quarterback. It's actually good that Hurts got this out of his system because he'll be back sharp in 2 weeks against most likely the Cowboys or the Bucs in a couple weeks when the Eagles play again.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that he didn't play particularly well in this game. Equally, I don't know if it would have been better for him not to, quote unquote, risk this game. Like the Giants were going to rest everybody, therefore all you needed to do was to stumble over the finish line. You were probably going
to win.
Right. You probably could have done that with Gardner Minshew anyway. Did you really need to play him in this game? Like, he took a lot of hits. I don't know. And they're through where they're through. I think the chances are he plays pretty well in the next game. He should have, I think, Lane Johnson. Is he going to be back for that? So his entire offensive line should be intact. The rest of the receiving core, et cetera, is all there. I don't have any reason to worry for Jalen Hurts.
All right, let's go to a couple of the biggest games here. The Seattle Seahawks 19, Rams 16. So the Seahawks win this game, and knowing what we know now on Sunday Night Football, the Seahawks are into the playoffs. They get the number 7 seed here. They knew they were playing for their playoff lives, and then they needed to root for the Lions. Lions fans watching this game with much disappointment. The Rams, man, it was a good back-and-forth game. The Rams had an opportunity to put the Seahawks away in the fourth quarter, but a running into the kicker penalty, very questionable. Lions fans were very upset with the officiating in this game.
Yeah, there were some weak officiating calls in this game. Having said that, Baker Mayfield makes an incredible play to get out of the pocket, what looked like a certain sack on, what was it, 3rd and 10?
Third and long, yeah.
Gets out of it, doesn't pick it all up, but gets 8. Gets out of the pocket, finds a receiver, hits him for 8 out of the 10 yards he needed. So it's 4th and 2 with, a minute and a half, a minute and 40, something like that left. Just go for it. You got nothing to lose. Your season's been done for weeks. You're playing Baker Mayfield. What the hell? Just go for the 4th and 2. Particularly, now, here's the thing. The momentum has been unquantifiable. There's been no proof that it exists for a long period of time. But if I was coming out of that play, wow, look at what Baker Mayfield just did. He escaped a sack and got 8 of our 10 yards. Quick, hustle up. Let's pick up the next 2 for him. It feels like that's a moment where everyone would have been galvanized. If we run that quickly, we pick up our 2 yards, we got a few more to go, and then we win the game, everyone goes home, we get to end the season on a happy note. Instead, it's no, let's punt the ball away, and then the gunner makes a balls out of trying to down it at the 1. The Seahawks get a shot at it. Why not just go for the 2 yards?
I didn't hate it at the time because, again, from a Rams perspective, you have nothing to lose. The team that cared the most about this was the Lions, right? If you were a Lions fan watching this, a tie also gives you was also a win basically for you, right? If you're a Lions fan. So I don't think I don't think it was egregious for the Rams to punt.
But compare the way the Lions played the last few minutes of the game last night versus how the Rams played the last couple of minutes here. The Lions were pulling out trick plays and all kinds of stuff to pick up the random yardage for a game that meant nothing to them other than pissing off Green Bay. The Rams, again, the game didn't really mean anything to them, but you just made a crazy play, pick up the 2 yards, go and get it. What's the point? Your season's already toast. Just go and do so. There's one random ass play that Zach has been dialing up on a napkin for the last 9 months. Let him pull it out on 4th and 2. Zach, what's that play you drew up that we laughed at in the canteen or what's the cafeteria?
Do you think Zach came up with the merry-go-round?
I don't know. But just pull out whatever your favorite ridiculous play is on 4th and 2. If you don't get it, who cares?
Well, they didn't do it. They punted, as you said. Geno Smith that was when he had his big scramble to get into field goal range, right? That was.
Well, he got the scramble and then ran into Jalen Ramsey.
That was overtime.
Was that overtime? I thought that was that.
Oh, no,
drive.
that was the fourth quarter, and then
that was that drive, right?
Yeah, and then they missed the field goal.
Yes.
So then the Seahawks missed the game-winning field goal. In overtime, though, both teams get the ball. Kenneth Walker with a big run or two in overtime, and the Seahawks get back into field goal range. And there was a penalty there as well, too, that just got them close, right? And Seahawks kicked the field goal, right, to win the game. Lions fans disappointed, meant their game against the Packers would not be a play-in game. And Seattle sneaks in as the 7 seed to play the 49ers now for the third time.
Which means playoff Geno.
We get playoff
We
Geno.
all thought. Playoff Geno, who broke Russell Wilson's passing yardage record for Seattle. What's that? What's your problem? Huh?
17 games, man.
Oh, the extra game. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. He broke the record. Everybody's breaking the records. Yeah.
He did, yeah. So Geno setting all-time records for the Seattle Seahawks in just his first year trying this. So, it's impressive. But playoff Geno.
Nobody's ever done that in Seahawks history. Not even Dave Craig.
Never happened.
In the
Never
dome.
happened before.
Never done it.
Can I also say, taunting is just better. We should just legalize taunting. Let it happen. It's a good thing. Quandre Diggs picks off Baker Mayfield. That was in overtime.
That was in overtime. That was amazing. So hold on really quick. Yeah. All right, you do your thing, and then I'll describe the play.
Baker Mayfield's got an open guy. He puts his Ryan Fitzpatrick's it, right? Puts his life force into this throw to try and get it there. It's just about going to make it. And then out of center field comes Quandre Diggs, picks it off after he catches the ball, like points at Bobby Wagner, former teammate, standing on the sideline before he's even finished the play, is essentially taunting Bobby Wagner, and then runs out of bounds. Like, they get the ball.
Leaves like 10 to 15 yards on the field.
It's just better. It's just good. That's an objectively better play than if he just quietly caught the ball, ran off onto the sideline, like took his interception, took his turnover. The fact that he added taunting to that is objectively better. Just let it go. Let it happen. Embrace the taunting.
Let me just put a bow on the future social media content here. That play reminded me of the scene from Fresh Prince where Carlton steals the ball from Will in the basketball game.
Yeah.
Steals the ball, and he's like, I'm going to be the hero, right? And you get the slow-mo, and he takes this long one-handed shot, and you're watching the ball in slow motion, and then it's an air ball at the end. That was as Baker Mayfield is winding up to throw, and especially the way the broadcast was showing it. Baker's winding up to throw. Next score wins. Baker's got these visions of walk-off touchdown. We're going to walk off touchdown right now. Game winner. The Lions fans are going to go nuts. Baker puts the ball into the air. It's in the air forever. You don't even see the safety. And then all of a sudden, Quandre Diggs just comes in and picks it off like Carlton Banks' air ball. And that was it. Lions' hopes dashed. Game over.
That throw is the throw that makes you remember and realize how special that Josh Allen and Justin Herbert are, because Baker Mayfield has a legitimately good arm. Like, I'm not getting into this whole, there's a group of people that think he's got a noodle for some reason. Baker Mayfield has a top third NFL arm of all the quarterbacks in this league. Like, he has a legit cannon. And if that's a Josh Allen or Justin Herbert throw, it's a completed catch. It's like the defining play of this miserable Ram season. Like, he absolutely finds, is it Van Jefferson streaking past the entire Seahawks secondary. Maybe they score a touchdown. Either way, they're into scoring range. It's a great play. And it's Baker Mayfield. He doesn't have a Josh Allen or a Justin Herbert arm. He just has a regular strong arm. And the ball's just in the air too long. Allows the center field safety to get over and intercept it. Like, it's not enough. But it's that's the throw you need to realize the context of Josh Allen and Justin Herbert and remind yourself just how abnormally freaky they are. Because even strong-armed NFL quarterbacks can't do what they do.
Yeah, and Herbert does it like rolling to his right on one leg sometimes, and Allen did it far hash and just threw it into the mailbox, as they say. Perfect. So, yeah, 19-16, Seahawks win. Now, Geno Smith starts the game with an interception. Jalen Ramsey has 2 interceptions in this game.
Really good play by Ramsey.
Geno finishes the year with just 11 interceptions, but he's second in the league in turnover-worthy plays. I think Geno Smith, two things are true here. Geno Smith has had a fantastic season, especially given the expectations, but overall he's been very good. Mm-hmm. He's also had a ton of interception luck and hasn't really played well against the 49ers. So that'll be interesting next week. But Geno Smith, I wonder if just winning this game gets him his next contract. I mean, he hit some incentives in this game.
The next game is far more relevant for his contract.
Maybe. But I feel like if the Seahawks didn't make the playoffs, it's far easier to say, who's next up? Anthony Richardson or Will Levis? Who's the next guy, right? Give me C.J. Stroud. Because they have an opportunity to be in that mix here. But this game, I don't know. I've got some concerns about Geno Smith. I don't know exactly where this lands.
This was the first game in a while where Seattle's pass protection has held up well. Like, remember, it collapsed down the stretch. And I mentioned the last show that maybe that explains some of the downturn in Geno Smith because his pass blocking fell to crap. In this game, the pass blocking was fine, and Geno still had 3 turnover-worthy plays. So,
also had the absolute dime for a 36-yard touchdown.
Bomb to Tyler Lockett, which moved him past Steve Largent in some record as well, which probably needed the 17th game. So you got that going for you.
You don't care. Nobody cares that we're rewriting the record books here. Nobody cares.
I didn't care before this morning, but now I care in the exact opposite way that you do. I've discovered that it irritates you a lot, so now I like it quite a lot.
The Tyler Lockett just
so every single 17 game record, or every single 17 game record that gets broken, I'm going to make sure to bring it up to you.
I thought Jamal Williams passing Barry Sanders' touchdown record might put you over the edge.
Not passing his record. That's unfortunate. But comparing them in any kind of broadcast setting was annoying to me. You know, like drawing up a graphic that has Jamal Williams on one side and Barry Sanders on the other is just patently on the face absurd.
I mean, you're right. Barry doesn't have as many touchdowns as Jamal Williams. It's kind of an insult to Jamal Williams. Uh-huh. It is. Well, let's talk about that game. Was there anything else? I had a point I was going to make on Geno, and then I forgot it. He did a good job running, 51 yards.
Yeah, I mean, he ran right into Jalen Ramsey's shoulder for that penalty.
It's actually funny because that thing I described where Russell Wilson looked like the best quarterback in the league for 3 or 4 games a year.
Yeah.
Geno did that 3 times this year. He had 3 90-plus grades. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to weigh that. Like the overall, can't take games away, but if you take away his 3 elite games, he's a below-average quarterback probably, but the elite games count in the whole mix here. And it was overall a very good season for Geno Smith. Seattle's in the playoffs because the Detroit Lions defeat the Green Bay Packers 20-16 on Sunday Night Football. The Lions finished second in the NFC North at 9-8. Packers finished third at 8-9. A little bit of a back-and-forth game here. And then the Lions, you just mentioned it earlier, they went for it late, man. They went for it. They not only, there's a lot of plays that made this game, but they had a 4-point lead, which they finished with, a 4-point lead, a 4th and 1, and they went for it. They went empty and went for it. And all they needed to do was convert to seal the deal, and they did it. And I made the point. This was like a minute 20 left in the game when they did this. This was an automatic field goal in the NFL 4 or 5 years ago, right? So there was a play earlier in this game where the Packers go for it on 4th and inches in their own territory, and they don't get it with the jet sweep, gets blown up. And Rodgers easily could have snuck it for an automatic first down. And, of course, everybody's like, oh, this is so stupid. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? And it's like, I think people are forgetting that if you watch enough football, teams are going for it on 4th and inches in their own territory all the time right now. When they get it, you don't think about it. When they don't get it, it's like the dumbest decision in the world. But the decision that Dan Campbell made to go for 4th and 1, up 4, with a pretty easy field goal on the table to make it a 7-point lead, that was the standard play 4 or 5 years ago in the NFL. Kick the field goal. So I thought that was a great play. The play leading up to it with the hook and ladder to
2nd and 17.
Set it up. I'll let you come back to that in a second. And there was one other thing that happened. The Lions are running out the clock. They get a 9-yard run on 1st and 10. They're right on the cusp where the Packers have to use all their timeouts, and there was one series left. And on 2nd and 1, we've seen Vrabel's Titans do this and everything. The defense jumps, you jump off sides on purpose. You want to give the offense the fresh set of downs, right? Because if on 2nd and 1, they're probably going to convert, they're going to, steal more time. Dan Campbell and the Lions decline the penalty, which earns them an extra play. They convert the first down the next play. It earns an extra play there, and that helped keep the clock moving. There was a lot of really, really good things that the Lions did down the stretch here, including 4th and 1. They go for it. One play away from the win, and they got it.
Yeah, smart clock management aside from anything else. But that play, the 4th and 1, was obviously a gutsy call, albeit a gutsy call with nothing to lose. But the 2nd and 17 play was, I think, far more impressive to me. Like, 2nd and 7 from Green Bay's 21. They get a couple of yards, but there's a holding call. So now it's 2nd and 17. Again, in the sort of traditional, what does the NFL usually do at this point? 2nd and 17 with a 4-point lead, with time winding down. You just got a holding call. Now you're giving up. Like, now you just dive up the middle for nothing. You're essentially sacrificing that drive, right? The Lions went, no, we're going to run a hook and lateral play to try and pick up the extra yardage, and then they get most of that back, right? They get a ton of that yardage back. Now it's 3rd and 3. They get a couple of yards, and that sets up the 4th and 1 play where they eventually go for it. But that was a gutsy call. Again, the kind of gutsy call that the Rams didn't make, where they gave up on the 4th and 2. But yeah, Detroit, they earned that win. Shame they didn't. I mean, the guy that bet us that the Lions would execute the comeback, at the point where they were buried. Like, both Detroit and Green Bay dragged themselves back from the absolute brink of elimination to get all the way back, and then each of them managed to trip themselves up on one hurdle. Like the Lions did it a couple of weeks ago, where they gave up 320 rushing yards to Carolina, and obviously Green Bay did it last night, where they capitulate against Detroit. But it's just, that's such an incredible season where both those two teams were essentially, I think the Packers were down to 6% probability to make the playoffs at one point in the season, got themselves all the way back to being favorites for it like yesterday. Like they were 60% favorites or something to make the playoffs out of those three teams, and ended up not getting it done. Detroit, I think, were all the way down to like 1%. They were single digits as well. Dragged themselves all the way back to, again, they were a 1 point favorite to that wild card spot. And then an absolute joke of a run defense game against Carolina torpedoes their season as well. But just such a weird year for those two teams.
It was. Even just the game, man, it looked like we've always joked about Jared Goff and his hand size. Oh, he's got 9-inch hands. It affects him in the weather. His first few throws were absolute ducks. And then he kept bouncing the ball and everything. It's like, man, Goff might not be able to complete a pass in this game.
Why was he throwing at the ground every 2 minutes?
It was almost like every time he had to reset or whatever, he just couldn't get anything on it. But he still hits a long 43-yarder to Khalif Raymond on a bomb. They had a negated touchdown. There was a point in the game where like the biggest impact plays were penalties. There was a 40-plus yard pass interference that the Packers earned. There was however long that touchdown was to Jameson Williams taken off the board because of a hold. These were the right calls, by the way, but it was like those were significant plays in the game. But the Lions were really resilient. Jamal Williams, once he gets into that tight red zone, he does have a nose for the end zone. He's got those 2 touchdowns to break Barry Sanders' record. Goff did make enough good throws down the stretch. Amon-Ra St. Brown with some beautiful catches that didn't catch with his hands. There's a couple of those in this game. So I want to give a ton of credit to the Lions. I thought their defense played so much better down the stretch. They made a few big plays just in the run game and everything. They did a pretty good job bottling up Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. So I want to give a ton of credit to the Lions. I haven't made many predictions correctly this year.
True.
The one thing that I said, even though I picked the Packers to cover, I did say that the Lions would play hard, even if they played hard, right? They played this game to win, to ruin their rivals' season, and they did it. And I think this entire offseason, you're going to talk about the Lions and their future, right? And they're picking, 6th in the draft? They've got the 2 first-rounders once again, and they're just arrow pointed up, man.
Yeah.
In Detroit.
It was a game where I think it didn't cost them. Obviously, they won the game, but they have been dealing with this problematic interior offensive line for most of the season when it comes to pass protection. Like, they've had a revolving door at guards. Frank Ragnow has been injured all year and battling through it. All 3 of those guys in the interior had pretty rough games in pass protection, and there were a bunch of plays where The Packers' defensive front, Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt had a big play in there as well where they just wrecked those guys and caused all kinds of problems. On the flip side, you had Aiden Hutchinson beating up on Josh Nijman to the point where Nijman gets benched. Zach Tom comes in. Zach Tom played this season, rookie, low-round guy. He started in place of David Bakhtiari first at the start of the year where Bakhtiari was coming back from the knee injury. Actually, he didn't start at the start of the year, did he? Somebody else did. But then he replaced him when Bakhtiari got his appendectomy, where he got appendicitis and had to miss a few weeks. Zach Tom came in and played really well, gave up only a couple of pressures playing left tackle for those few games. He ends up coming in playing right tackle in this game, and it didn't go particularly well. Like, he gave up a bunch of pressure, had a pass blocking grade of 26 or whatever. So this was a weird game for both teams struggling at a couple of key areas on the offensive line and pass protection.
All right, now let's talk Packers perspective here. Aaron Rodgers and everything that happened in this game. Aaron Rodgers threw 3 passes directly to Kirby Joseph. In the last game, he already was intercepted by Kirby Joseph twice. It was truly unbelievable.
It's genuinely like Aaron Rodgers can't see Kirby Joseph.
Yeah, I don't understand it. Rodgers finishes the game with 3 turnover-worthy plays. One was a dropped interception by Kirby Joseph. There was another actual interception by Kirby Joseph where, again, he just pretty much threw it right to him. It was negated by hands to the face penalty for the Lions. Again, it was the right call, but there was a point where Lions fans are watching this entire day of action, and it's like literally everything that we do is, getting negated by penalty. Everything that we do well, the Seahawks game, nothing's going right from a call standpoint. But then the Lions make the comeback, and Rodgers has a chance to make the fourth quarter comeback. Ball's in Aaron Rodgers' hands in the fourth quarter, needing a touchdown, down 4, and season on the line. Lions blitz. Rodgers knows the blitz is coming. He knows he's going to take a hit, and he throws another one to Kirby Joseph. An interception, 3rd turnover-worthy play, 3rd ball that hits Kirby Joseph in the hands, 1st one that actually counts, and that's pretty much it. That's the Packers season. Rodgers didn't get the ball back at all, and that was it. Packers season over. They fall to 8-9. Lions win 20-16, and all the questions, right? Everyone trying to figure out what's Aaron Rodgers thinking. Jamison Williams, the rookie receiver for the Lions, went up to Aaron Rodgers asking for his jersey. Aaron said, "No, I'm going to hold on to this." I had a little chuckle as my Twitter timeline was watching Aaron Rodgers after the game, trying to figure out what's in Aaron Rodgers' head. What's he thinking right now? Let's psychoanalyze Aaron Rodgers and tell you what he's thinking right now. He's soaking it up. He's doing this. He's doing that. It's like you're trying to predict what Aaron Rodgers is thinking right now. That's a little ridiculous. The Twitter timeline. But yeah, he did sit there and looked a little stunned. Whether it's him reflecting on the season, his career, walked off the field with Randall Cobb with their arms around each other. It could be the end of Randall Cobb's career. There it is, the Rodgers and Cobb walking off together after the game. So it was a tough scene in Green Bay at the end of the game.
Yeah. Who knows, trying to predict what these types of quarterbacks are going to do. It doesn't feel like the kind of game you want to go out on. Just a failure at the final hurdle to even get into the playoffs. I don't know. Who knows? But it doesn't feel like the way Rodgers would want to go out. Particularly with, you've been making the point Detroit's arrow is pointing up. I mean, the way Christian Watson came on late in the year, like you can make the argument that Green Bay is headed in the right direction as well, albeit not quite quick enough.
I got the feeling throughout the entire season that Rodgers, the more the season went on, the more I expected him to come back to Green Bay. And when you have Watson, I mean, Romeo Doubs had a rough game in this one. All of that preseason hype may have been a little bit too much, but Watson picked up the hype, right? I mean, Watson looks like a dude who could score 15 touchdowns and average 17 per catch next year and all this stuff. I mean, it does feel like Rodgers doesn't want to go out like this. He's still physically capable. I don't understand why he had as many turnover-worthy plays as he did this year compared to previous years. He was just off on a bunch of throws this year, again, compared to previous years. But you could also make the argument that a big part of the production difference in Green Bay was just not having Devontae Adams. I mean, it could just be that simple, losing Adams having to go through all the growing pains. I could see Aaron Rodgers coming back. But, Yeah, tough season in Green Bay, and after that late push, as you said, from the dead, and they just they couldn't do it at the end.
Speaking of late pushes, one of the dumbest ejections you're ever going to see from Quay Walker, which is the second really dumb ejection of the season. Man, I'm just going to really stop shoving people that are irrelevant to the game.
It was really bad. There was a play at the end of the game where the Packers had Quay Walker push a trainer.
And Wyatt did it as well, by the way.
Devontae Wyatt manned up to him. He chest bumped the same trainer.
He shoved him in a different way, slightly more subtly, but
And on the same play, defensive tackle Jaron Reed gave DeAndre Swift a forearm shiver, and that one didn't actually get called. The only one that got called was Quay Walker, and he got ejected. Now, the nuance to this, not defending Quay Walker at all, but what happened was I think Walker went to Georgia, Devontae Wyatt went to Georgia, DeAndre Swift was hurt on the play, Georgia guy. I think they were all buddies or whatever. Walker was kind of over Swift, not taunting or anything. He was trying to see if his friend, I believe, was okay. The trainer comes on the field, tries to move Walker out of the way so he can tend to Swift, and Walker got offended, comes back and pushes him. And it's like just a bad reaction by Quay Walker. Not smart.
Stupid thing to do. Like, the only thing that would even explain it is if the trainer said something like egregiously offensive to Quay Walker, which I have no reason to think happened. But like, then it would be dumb.
Pushed out of the way, and I know a lot of times the human instinct is somebody pushes you out of the way and you push back without thinking who it is. But he turned around. I don't know if he didn't see the trainer, if he didn't know who it was. But either way, the guy that's going to move you out of the way is probably a referee.
But also the
right?
guy.
So it would have been a referee or.
There are times where officials do that to players, and it is, I think, overstepping the line, and they rely on this. Well, you're not allowed to touch me, and it's kind of bullshit. This guy didn't. Like, he just moved him the way you move. It was entirely reasonable the way the trainer moved this guy. It was not the way officials sometimes step over the line with players and manhandle them, knowing that they can't do anything back to them. This was a guy trying to get to an injured player and just slightly moved Walker out of the way. And then Walker just like looks at him and shoves him in the back. It was absurd. Like, the only way that makes any kind of sense is if, whilst moving him out of the way, the trainer said something ridiculous and extremely insulting and offensive to Walker, which, again, I have no reason to think happened. Walker shoves him, and then Wyatt like sidles up behind the guy and like gives him a shoulder bump. That should have got him ejected as well. And that was so absurd and late in the play that nobody even saw it happen.
You could make the argument, like, I'm not defending Quay Walker at all here. I have to preface that. But you can make the argument that Wyatt was worse because he knows that's the trainer at that point. If Quay was like a little stunned by somebody moved me out of the way and it was his instinct
to push. The only thing that would make me even wonder, like, it's such a disproportionate reaction from both of them.
Yeah.
To a guy coming in and being like, hey.
If he had said something.
Right. It's like, why would those two react like that to what happened? It makes no sense. That's the only thing that has me like, what could possibly have happened to prompt that reaction from two different people?
Yeah.
It's just bizarre. But that, as I said at the start, that's Walker's second idiotic ejection of the year for shoving some rando who had nothing to do with anything. Like,
what was it, a Bills coach last time?
Yeah, but I think the Bills coach like helped him up or something stupid. It was like a guy in training gear again on the sideline. He shoves him. It's just like, dude, there are dumb plays, and then there's like, you've been tossed out of a game twice for an absolutely idiotic thing this season. That's absurd.
And obviously made so much worse with what happened this week after the Damar Hamlin stuff and how quickly trainers had to act in that situation. I do wonder if the NFL starts to, even if the Georgia guys were well-intentioned trying to check on DeAndre Swift, if they have to do a better job of just making sure players are away from any injured players, make sure trainers have a clean path to them.
I mean, of all the weeks to start messing with a trainer, this is not the one.
No, not good. Not good by Quay Walker. But so some uncertainty in Green Bay going forward. And I just got to hand it to Dan Campbell, the fighting Dan Campbell's in Detroit. Jared Goff, I thought earlier in the year his stats were like a little inflated for how he was playing, but he played really well overall down the stretch. Even yesterday after he missed a bunch of throws early, he hit him when he needed to. So we'll see if Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator, ends up getting some love here during the coaching cycle. Couple other NFC games to touch on. Washington Commanders 26, Dallas Cowboys 6. What was this, Sam? We spent all week somewhat defending. I see the Dallas fans and media, everyone's criticizing Dak Prescott for interceptions. And all we do here is talk about context. We're contextual people here. And we can pull out stats like Dak has the 17th highest turnover-worthy play percentage. It's not great, but it's not the worst.
Well, he leads the league with the most interceptions that are not turnover-worthy plays this year.
Yeah.
So,
passes that should not be intercepted.
Right.
They should be intercepted 3% of the time or 2% of the time, and they still end up intercepted.
I was giving some information to a Cowboys reporter, I think, who was trying to write an article essentially like this, because the media has been on Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott has been kind of, I don't know if this quietly or specifically to this guy or even publicly, that him and Cooper Rush have been essentially advocating for an evolution of the statistics, right? So rather than just charging me with the interception, let's have some sort of baseball evolution where we contextualize it, right? Like which ones of these interceptions are our fault, which ones are on receivers or whatever. Like let's get better than just a touchdown and interception ratio. We can do better than that, which is why PFF has big time throws, turnover-worthy plays. Like you can do better than that, and we should. So I was sort of giving him information about the percentage of Dak's interceptions that are turnover-worthy plays, like where he stands and all this kind of thing. And then he goes out in this game and just starts firing the ball straight to Washington defenders all game long. And you're like, okay. It's probably not the time to run that particular piece right now.
But and once again, there's no nuance to any of this. Like half the people are like, oh, who are we gonna blame for Dak's play today? It's like nobody. This is all his fault. He was terrible. He couldn't complete a pass in this game. 14 of 37 for 128. Had the pick six and could have had more as far as the interceptions go. So yeah, it's okay to say throughout the season, Dak Prescott has had some bad interception luck, and in this game, he was terrible. So the Commanders' defense was lights out. Dallas couldn't do a thing. I don't know what this means going forward. It does seem like every few weeks, Dallas just kind of lays an egg, right? Like this is the same team on Christmas Eve where Dak threw a pick six, his fault again, and then he couldn't miss.
Yeah.
Against Philadelphia, who's a really good team. Dallas had every single answer. You ran this coverage? We got an answer. We have an answer. That was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Isn't this just the most Dallas thing in the world? It's like you're a really good team. You have a team that can win a Super Bowl. You're heading into the playoffs, and then right on the eve of the playoffs, you have a disaster of a game. And now that entire building is going to be spending this week going, come on, don't let it happen again. No, come on.
Dude, if they lose to Tampa Bay.
Which is entirely possible.
Which is possible the way Tampa Bay looked 2 weeks ago, for whatever that's worth, right? It's like, a quarter and a game and a half of old school Tampa Bay that we have this season. If they go into Tampa Bay and lose Monday Night Football next week, what's Jerry Jones going to do?
Fire everybody.
Is he backing the truck up for Sean Payton?
Sure.
We could be sitting here, not a week, because we won't have seen the game a week from now at this time, but 8 days from now.
Yeah.
Is Jerry Jones going all in?
We have plenty of time to get into the Dallas playoff debacle. Sam Howell played well.
Yeah. He also had one of the worst interceptions of the season.
Well, yeah, but Sam Howell looks like what people wanted Tim Tebow to be. This like weirdly effective running quarterback that actually is also capable of throwing a dime every now and again.
Yeah,
it's just enough.
4 rushing first downs for Sam Howell. He's just kind of became a power runner out of nowhere last year. Carried over a little bit yesterday. Made some beautiful throws down the field. Did have that horrendous red zone interception. But overall, the offense looked decent.
And they designed this offense around his rushing threat. That was where they came down on this. They let him pass the ball, but they were running designed run plays. They were lining up in formations that were very quarterback run centric. Like his big time throw was a deep pass down the sideline to Terry McLaurin, right? But it came out of a formation that looked like it was an option play, from alignment. Like there's multiple H-backs. There's a tailback behind him. He's in shotgun. Like this is a college run offense. And then he just drops back and fires a bomb to Terry McLaurin down the sideline. This was kind of fun.
It was. I mean, it's one game, and we've seen plenty of one-game samples where quarterbacks look good. I don't think it's enough for Washington to not look elsewhere for quarterbacks going forward. But hey, it's a good start for Sam Howell. See if he can build off of it. I mean, Commanders played hard. They played well. I know a lot of times we think, hey, teams aren't playing for anything. They don't care. The players care, man. They're always going to go out there and play. They played well in Washington. The defense was fantastic. Dak has his second worst game of the season. His worst game was week 1 against the Bucs, who they're going to play this week. So it's interesting time in Dallas. I know the interceptions are the talk for Dak, but last year down the stretch, remember, he had those games with multiple turnover-worthy plays. He's done that now 3 times in the last few weeks. He has had – it's not like he's been completely absolved of poor decision-making here. Will be interesting to see how Dallas bounces back here. They've had a lot of these stretches. Win 2, lose 1, win 4, lose 1 throughout the week. We'll see if this means anything.
Reshuffle line for Dallas. Injuries to Tyler Biadasz meant that Connor McGovern was in at center. All of a sudden, Tyler Smith finally gets to play left guard where he was supposed to be playing all along. That brought Jason Peters in at left tackle. Tyron Smith is still at right tackle. So this is a very reshuffled Dallas line versus a few weeks ago. I thought it played pretty well. Like, there were a couple plays here or there where they gave up some pressure, but if that's the line, in the playoffs, that should be good.
The chat wants us to go a full 3 hours here.
No, it's going to happen.
There's only like 3 or 4 games left. Some are insignificant.
Yes.
I don't think we'll go a full 3 hours.
We better not, because I got articles to write.
Oh yeah, you got work to do. I'm on. It's just football today.
Well, that's a hard out as well. What time do you need to start that?
I don't know. Whatever.
You're
live at 11.
Sitting in for Renner?
Yeah. Where is Renner? Where is he?
L.A., right? The national title game.
Why?
Because nobody told him he couldn't. The usual reason Renner isn't here.
Does he know he's a co-host of a daily show?
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll take that offline, as they say. Touch on it briefly. San Francisco 49ers 38, Arizona Cardinals 13. The Dallas game mattered because there was a chance they could have the number 1 seed at the end of the day. There's a chance they could have won the division. They would have needed the backup Giants to beat the Eagles, but Dallas was presumably playing. Yeah. The Niners also had that in play. So they played hard and they played well outside of a 77-yarder to A.J. Green.
Which, what the hell? It was like A.J. Green suddenly became 2015 A.J. Green again for a play.
Yeah.
Which went out, mossed a couple of people, and then ran it into the end zone.
The Niners also have, remember they started the Miami game, first pass, 75-yard touchdown against the Dolphins. This game, first pass, 77-yard touchdown. Against the Bucs, they had a negated 60-something-yarder against Mike Evans. Like random coverage busts and lulls for a very good San Francisco defense. But that was it for Arizona. Niners offense was just too much. Elijah Mitchell comes back, 5 carries, 55 yards, and 2 scores. Christian McCaffrey running through the D, both as a runner and as a receiver. And Brock Purdy doing it once again, moving the ball around, finishing with the old passer rating of 141 here, Sam. And I forget how many starts it was, whatever it was. We get the stat. Best passer rating, first X number of starts, whatever Brock Purdy has. It's just Brock Purdy, Kurt Warner, and Patrick Mahomes. Those are the guys. Those are the guys.
The Holy Trinity.
Just like Kyle Shanahan has the stat where it's Nick Mullins, Andrew Luck, Kurt Warner, right?
I think Mahomes is on that one as well.
Mahomes.
Yeah.
It's all Shanahan first-time starters, and Warner, Mahomes, and Marino, and every other Hall of Famer you want to talk to. Yeah,
I mean, we know Shanahan's offense works wonders, and it works wonders without necessarily tremendously talented quarterbacks. We're also, I think, starting to discover that Brock Purdy is absolutely capable of executing this thing as good as anybody that he's had in it since Matt Ryan. Like, that's the standard, right? Since Matt Ryan, Jimmy Garoppolo is probably the high watermark, and then it's been a bunch of quarterbacks that are some way below Garoppolo. Right now, Purdy looks like he's closer to Jimmy G than anything else, and might be as good as anything we've seen from Jimmy G. Like, okay, I think the supporting cast is better because you've got Christian McCaffrey in there now. You're finally getting all those guys healthy at the same time. So it's as good a situation as anybody has ever had in this offense. But Purdy isn't making the mistakes. He's getting the ball where it needs to go. He's taking advantage of the free plays. He's making all the layups. That's all you can ask for him.
And the Niners were back at full strength. Deebo Samuel is out there, had a couple catches, had a carry in there. They're ready to go, man. They've got all their guys back, Mitchell back, Debo back, George Kittle, another, he finds the end zone twice. He had a couple slick catches in there. Juszczyk is still there. I mean, everybody's there.
Yeah.
And we haven't seen the Niners at full strength a ton, but here they are, number 2 seed, and they're looking good.
Yeah.
And they match up favorably in round 1 with the Seahawks.
They look as good as anybody in the NFL right now.
10 straight wins for the Niners, and as hot as any team heading into the playoffs here.
J.J. Watt goes out on a high note. A couple of sacks for him. Both pretty high quality plays. He had 4 pressures in total. He looked like old version J.J. Watt. Now, admittedly, he also kind of zeroed in on the weakest link in the 49ers offensive line and went, I'm going to be spending most of my time against you. So, hey, how's it going? But, he's earned that right.
It was a good finish by J.J. Watt. Do you have I saw someone else mention this, so I'm going to steal it. But, do you have the sense that maybe J.J. is going to make a little midseason return next year?
I don't know.
Be like, hey, hey, Steelers, let me play with TJ for half a season or whoever.
I think, this would be a pretty smart time to go out if you're J.J. Watt, I think. He clearly is declining. He's also still clearly capable of good play. It's a sort of nice high moment to go out on in terms of where he is. He seems physically okay after a litany of injuries throughout his career. I think it's a smart time to go out. That being said, if somebody phones him up in December next year, a team that's got 10 wins under their belt and needs a guy that can come in and give them 15 snaps a game, I think he'd be a really good addition to a team like that. So, I don't know. It wouldn't shock me if you've seen the last from him. It also wouldn't shock me if he came back.
Yeah, this, that's always my take is if you take the guy that usually plays 50 or 60 snaps and give him 25 or 30, can you prolong the career a little bit? Sadly, we didn't get the red zone J.J. Watt touchdown opportunity because remember Texans used to use him as a tight end, and he looked really good at tight end. He could have had another career doing that. So Niners took care of business, and they locked up the 2 seed. All right, the only games we haven't covered. Let's talk about the Texans.
Okay.
Because the other games were really insignificant. Houston Texans 32. Indianapolis Colts 31. We'll combine this with the Vikings and the Bears. The Texans win. Because this is draft time. We're talking about the number 1 overall pick here.
Uh-huh.
The Texans win to go to 3-13-1. The Bears lose to fall to 3-14. And the Bears are now on the clock with the number 1 overall pick. Not only did the Texans win, they did it in dramatic fashion with a 2-point conversion for the win. And for his troubles, Lovie Smith has since been fired as the Texans go for 2, get it, and earn the number 2 pick rather than number 1. Thoughts?
Yeah, the Texans win their way out of the number 1 overall pick, which, as we talked about heading into this week, could be an incredible boon for the Chicago Bears, who can now trade away that pick for a massive haul, which could have been Houston's. Yeah, so they were winning this game right from the start. Like, they looked like they were going to go and take this win very early on, and then it was like Davis Mills. I had this whole thing set up, what it reminded me of. Davis Mills decided to take it upon himself in the space of like 2 minutes to go, actually, you know what, we're not winning this game. Watch this, pick 6. And then a minute later, just a deep interception. It's like Davis Mills on his own was going to ensure that the Houston Texans were going to end up with that number 1 overall pick. What it reminded me of was, you remember in The Naked Gun when the guy kind of creates this Manchurian candidate assassin out of his secretary using like a car remote control? He just presses a button and the secretary goes into this automaton trance and puts the gun out, and it's like, it was like Nick Caserio from The Booth, had the little remote control, presses it, and then Davis Mills just heaves a pick 6 and then heaves an interception again. Like Nick Caserio. It
did look like there was some.
Right.
Yeah.
Nick Caserio went, all right, that's enough of this crap. Hits the remote control, and then Davis Mills goes, Operation number 1 pick and starts throwing the game away. But then they came back. It ruined it because they ended up getting the win.
Yeah.
Ruined both
ran out of batteries.
Right. Ruined both their draft pick and my metaphor that I was going to use in the show. But then the other thing is, so Colts safety Rodney Thomas makes a play. He got the second interception, I think, from Davis Mills. And he's a guy, I think he was like high school teammates of Damar Hamlin. So he goes and like celebrates on the number 3, which was decked out in the Bills colors for I think every game in the league. But, like, you know, great moment for him. Former Damar Hamlin teammate, really good friend. I think he drove from Indianapolis to Cincinnati to go visit him in the hospital, like, during the week. They're still that good friends. He went like full Raheem Moore in the end zone for the touchdown. Like Davis Mills, the touchdown that tied it up or almost tied it up, gave them the chance at the 2-point win, was like a blind heaving hope into the end zone that should have been picked off or at least batted away. And Rodney Thomas was the guy that went full Raheem Moore on it, just misjudged the flight, goes over his head, caught. No! Like, what are you doing?
I don't think players in teams, really, I don't think they're actively tanking. Like, I don't think it's a discussed thing. You can make personnel decisions to, you know, lose more games if you want.
Yes.
I don't think team players are actively tanking. But there were several plays in this game that were questionable, right? I mean, it's kind of like a couple years ago when the Jets and Jaguars were battling for who's going to select Trevor Lawrence. And the Jets would, like, there's only like 7 guys out there on, like, field goal block and all this stuff. I mean, it's like you're going to, or they, like, purposely had, like, 15 guys on the field. It's like, oops, there was a penalty. But I've got people sending me Colts players forcing fumbles on each other, the offensive
incredible.
linemen. I mean,
Who was that? Was that Will Freeze?
I forget exactly. But look, I mean, there's a whole article on The Athletic this week about Jim Irsay and how crazy this season has been and how he's, you know, hiring Jeff Saturday and how upset he is that they're losing these division games and all that stuff. On one hand, I don't expect Jim Irsay to want to lose the last 7 games of the Jeff Saturday regime here.
I think it was Matt Pryor.
Matt Pryor, there we go.
Amazing. He peanut punched his own running back for a forced fumble. It was incredible.
Ridiculous. But the Colts now have the number 4 pick, and I don't think they're that upset that they end up losing because they're sitting there at number 4. The Bears hold all the cards now at number 1 overall. Yes, I think there should be discourse about what the Bears should do at number 1. Select a quarterback, Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud. Not because of anything against Justin Fields, just that they could be, if those guys are as good as Justin Fields and you get, you know, 2 extra years of a rookie contract, there's a discussion to be had there. Whether you trade number 1 or trade Justin Fields, there's going to be a market for those players. There's a lot that the Bears can do. I don't think that the Texans lost Trevor Lawrence or anything like that. It's not egregious falling to 2, but they just lost control of the draft, right? They just lost control. They gave the Bears all the cards, and the fact that the Colts are at 4, division rival, and knowing what Jim Irsay has gone through this entire offseason and how upset he is that he doesn't have his quarterback and he doesn't want to go get another veteran, I can see the Colts just going, here's all my picks, Bears. We want to pick our quarterback, assuming they love one of them. Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, whatever it might be.
It's a weird one because, like, this objectively hurts the Houston Texans for no good reason other than players always play. They're always going to try and win the game. This is the way of the world. But if you're Nick Caserio and you're like, the only good thing at it, like, he's a smart guy, right? He's going to try and do, or feels like he would try and do what the Eagles did a couple of years ago, where they intentionally pulled all of their good players to lose a game that ended up improving their draft position, which you can argue was sparked a big part of where they are right now. Houston was in that situation where, okay, we threatened winning this game, and then we thrown the lead away. Now quickly shut up shop and lose the game so we can take the number 1 overall pick. And people are sort of saying, well, coaches and players don't care. Okay, but somebody in the building should. Like, institutionally, somebody making decisions needs to care that this is going to hurt if we lose this. Maybe not directly 1-to-1, but like, we lose the ability to control this draft. We no longer get to choose who is the first player off the board. We no longer get to choose if we're going to trade back and take the giant trade haul that might be offered to Chicago. We lose those options. It might not be the thing that determines whether or not we're good going forward, but it's definitely a thing.
But the Dolphins just lost a first-round pick for that, didn't they?
For what?
For potentially for talking about tanking.
No, they lost a first-round pick for, like, essentially bribing the coach.
I thought it was more the tanking part.
And also, I think it wasn't tampering that lost them the pick in the first place. Anyway.
Oh, it was tampering, yeah.
But, like, you can't – I mean, the Eagles did what they did, right? You can't – that's a thing. It happens. It's legal. It's not like you're going to punish them for it.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, if Lovie Smith isn't going to tank the game for you, then put somebody else in there calling the plays that will. If Davis Mills is going to keep going out there trying to make the play, sit him down for somebody that's going to throw the ball at the floor. Like, don't win the game.
Yeah.
It's bad.
They won. So the Colts lose, fall to 4-12-1. Not much better than the Texans at 3-13-1. One of those 4 wins by the Colts, by the way, was against the Chiefs. As we look back at this season, fascinating. Lovie Smith has since been fired. That means now they had
Coach Saturday hasn't.
Coach Saturday has not. He's interviewing for the real job. To lose, he's interviewing to lose the interim.
How do you think that's going to go?
I mean, I have the same take on interim coaches, whether they look like Jeff Saturday or whether they look like Steve Wilks. I don't think showing up mid-season or taking over mid-season is the way to determine how you're going to do for the next 4 years as the head coach. I don't. I think it's a different world. It's a whole different thing. Jeff Saturday could be a genius with an offseason to put in his own system and whatever. He could be. I doubt it, but he could be.
I just think it's pretty
Steve
funny.
Wilks could be terrible if you give, who knows?
This was another one where, Jim Irsay was kind of doing victory laps out of the first game. You guys said we were just doing stupid things, but we're making bold decisions to win games after they beat the Raiders, and then 7 defeats later. It's like, yeah.
The Greg Gabriel, if you will.
The Greg Gabe.
Greg Gabe went viral for his bad Bears takes from earlier this season. Anyway, look, we could talk. Let's talk about the firings, and it's a terrible day, but we could talk about this stuff more. But the Texans went David Culley, one and done. Lovie Smith, one and done. If people are acting shocked today that Lovie Smith got fired, what's shocking about it?
I mean, Lovie Smith was an interim coach in everything but name. Like, they hired him for a 1-year stopgap. Like, we're just going to wait until next year to get the real coach.
The bigger
Which is
question,
exactly the same way they hired David Culley, by the way. They haven't hired a real coach for this job since Nick Caserio has been there.
The big issue with that is not that, okay, they moved on from Lovie Smith after 1 year, which was kind of expected. The bigger issue with that is you had 2 coaches in the last 2 years while you were drafting for the presumed nucleus of your team going forward as part of this massive overhaul. And we know how much coaches care about their own scheme and, whatever it is. They had 2 coaching staffs in there basically who were not there any longer, have all this input in their draft, all this input in their team building decisions along with Nick Caserio. And now they're gone. That feels like a big waste of time.
Yeah, but
you're the Texans.
But that's the thing. Like, did they have input into this? Or was it just Nick Caserio did the draft and said, here's what you have, go win games?
Maybe, but but that's bad too, though.
Why?
Because you have to have synergy with the front office and the coaching staff.
Well, now you can get that when you hire the real coach.
Then you just potentially wasted because the new coach might not want Jalen Petrie or whoever. They might not want Kenyon Green.
Tough. That's not your call. Like, you make the meal with the groceries I supply you. That's how this works.
You could have drafted better though if you had synergy with your front office. I don't know. It feels like the Texans continue to tread water.
I mean, I just think,
but it's not unexpected. I don't think that Lovie Smith is out.
Not at all.
I also, really quick, I also don't think Lovie Smith did a bad job. I think those dudes played hard. They played hard against the Cowboys and against good teams and whatever. Like, Lovie Smith's team played as well as they could have, and the roster was the worst in the NFL. That was expected.
Like, it was
but he also was expected to be a one-and-done coach.
Right. It was a bad roster that was never expected to compete. It was always supposed to get the number 1 overall pick, and he made a mess of the one thing that he was supposed to achieve this year, which is have the worst record in the NFL. He was always supposed to be a one-and-done coach. They didn't start this project until they got rid of Deshaun Watson, which didn't happen until most of the important off-season decisions had already been made. So Lovie Smith was always going to get canned after this year. The only surprising thing was when reports started emerging yesterday that Nick Caserio's job was not necessarily safe. Like, that would be crazy if the one guy who's supposed to be leading this rebuild project gets fired essentially 9 months after starting it because you were treading water until you got rid of Deshaun Watson. So now is the interesting time for the Texans because they're going to make this official change and presumably try and find a real head coach. And by real, I mean a guy that you actually believe in long term, as opposed to somebody that's been a coach or has experience or blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't mean that David Culley or Lovie Smith aren't real coaches. Like, they're not Jeff Saturday, right? They actually have coaching experience and credentials and they belong in head coaching jobs. But what I'm saying is They were not hired because the Texans believed in them for the next 5 years. They were hired because they couldn't find a guy they believed in for the next 5 years and just had to put a body in the seat. Now is the time where they should be able to go and find a guy to take that job, in addition to being able to deploy their resources and actually go and restart this rebuild now that you've got the Deshaun Watson collateral.
All right, we'll have more on the Texans throughout the entire offseason, of course, and the Colts. Two of the more fascinating, 32 fascinating franchises, really, Sam. And then the other team that I mentioned, the Vikings win 29-13 over the Bears. The Bears understood the assignment. They're trotting Nathan Peterman and Tim Boyle out there.
There you go.
And the Vikings also understood the assignment. Just in case the Niners lose, we can get the number 2 seed. Let's go out there and dominate. They did. Kirk Cousins finishes 17 of 20 for 225 and a score. Good way to finish the season statistically for Kirk.
Yeah.
He looked good, though, in that game.
Yeah, I mean, the Vikings, it looked like they might be doing what they normally do, which is they score early, they get the ball back, and then they're driving. It's like, okay, this is where you should actually, a good team would start to roll from this point, right? Score again, make it double digits, like just run off into the distance. Do what the Chiefs did against the Raiders. Just make it easy. But as soon as they're driving on that second drive, Dalvin Cook fumbles the ball away. It's like this team is like the Bucs. They just can't get out of their own way long enough to actually go and win a game by double digits. And then ultimately, like the longer it went, the more the disparity between Kirk Cousins and Nathan Peterman and then Tim Boyle became apparent. They made enough plays and eventually just put it out of reach.
So the Vikings finished 13-4. Bears finished 3-14. They got the number 1 pick for the first time since the 40s. I hinted at they should at least discuss Bryce Young or maybe the other quarterback you like, whoever it might be, at number 1 and potentially trading Justin Fields. A lot of Bears fans are very upset about that suggestion. I don't think this discourse is bad. I mean, if you're in the Bears front office, you basically have 3 options here, right? And we'll spend the next 4 months talking about it. But you have 3 options. You stick with Justin Fields, you draft a player at number 1 overall. Take the best non-quarterback. Will Anderson, Jalen Carter, have your fun. Number 2, you stick with Justin Fields, and you trade down from number 1. You get an absolute haul. You have all this free agent space. You're going to reshape this roster in a year. And then number 3, you draft your favorite quarterback. You trade Justin Fields. You still probably get a haul, and you reshape the roster in a year. I think the worst option is picking Will Anderson, as good as Will Anderson might be. And the best option is either trade down or trade Fields, right? Because quarterback commodity, like the quarterback as a commodity to trade or to have on your team with a rookie contract is some of the biggest value in the NFL. So I think those discussions will be fascinating in the coming months.
It has to be a conversation that's at least had, even if the conversation lasts 10 minutes and the conclusion of which is we love Justin Fields, we're rolling with him.
And I think that's fair if that's the case. He's shown superstar ability. It's also fair to say, yeah, we'll have him for a couple more years. We think Bryce Young's a comparable player. We should go with Bryce Young.
The other thing to come from this game is that the Bears end up shipping what turns out to be the number 32 overall pick to Pittsburgh for Chase Claypool.
That's a massive loss for the Bears in this one.
What seemed like easy enough to talk yourself into at the time, like a second-round pick for a guy that could become our number 1 receiver if we give him a giant more opportunity than he's going to get in Pittsburgh, ends up being just we gave away what is effectively a first-round draft pick for a guy that's not relevant.
It's a huge win for the Steelers, obviously. I mean, last year at this time, the Rams gave up a 2 and a 3 for Von Miller. And that one's like easy to justify, right? It's like the end of the year, we're not going to have a 2 or a 3. But we're going to have Von Miller for a Super Bowl playoff run, which worked.
And we're going to get something back in return with once he signs.
And then you get Buffalo. A comp pick and the whole thing. For the Bears, you were trying to sell yourself on Chase Claypool, the number 3 or 4 receiver in Pittsburgh, who has upside. And we get a couple years of him, and we get a look at him a little early. We get a half a season look at him early, and he was even injured during that time. It does look like a huge loss for the Bears. Even if Claypool ends up really good, you'd still rather have pick 32 this year because of the rookie contract and the fact that you get to pick a player from scratch here.
Yeah. Minnesota's offensive line still reshuffled, still dealing with backups in a couple of spots. They played a lot better in this game. On the other hand, you would expect them to, because Chicago has the worst pass rush in the NFL, the worst defensive line in the NFL. So on the one hand, like it's a good thing that they didn't have real problems in this game, but it's literally the lowest possible bar you can expect to clear. It's only going to get harder. This is also the Duke Shelley revenge game.
Of course.
Man made a ton of plays.
Duke Shelley's that's the whole second half of the season. Duke Shelley's making plays for the Vikings.
Got himself his interception, a couple of pass breakups, only gave up one catch. Like, the dude was a beast.
I did forget to remind people, hit the like button. Smash the like button.
You really let that slide as the season.
I've only had 18 weeks to get it going. We got a good crew here on Monday morning. I think that's all the games minus the NFC South. And it's fitting that we finish with that.
NFC South.
Atlanta 30, Bucs 17. Bucs had already locked up the division. And Brady and the starters played for 4 or 5 series, right? You said almost the end of the first half. Brady looked livid when he had to finally come out of the game. I didn't see his post-game press conference, but he looked very upset on the sideline. Mike Evans missed the game due to illness just before the game. And there's not much else here. Desmond Ridder did some nice stuff. Drake London made a bunch of plays. And Tyler Algier, like all those rookies, look pretty good for the Falcons.
For the second straight game, Desmond Ridder had the best game he's had in the NFL. For the first time, I think the stats reflected it a bit more. Like, his numbers actually look fine in this game. Last week, it was the best we'd seen from him, and it still wasn't very good. Tyler Algier, I think, is genuinely kind of pushing his way into the offensive rookie of the year conversation. Legitimately. Like, I think has as good a case as anybody at this point. He continues to absolutely dominate for them. It's kind of marginalized Cordero Patterson to a degree in that offense, who obviously had such an incredible year a season ago. And then, Drake London, I think, has been reasonably impressive all season long. So that's a pretty good way to end for Atlanta of, you didn't do a bad job this season anyway, and all of your rookies had good games to finish.
If any of our NFL front office colleagues are watching and listening and all that stuff, do you want to know which running back had the highest highest number in my draft model? Which running back?
Who was the best draft model running back?
Yes, for me.
Is it Tyler Algier?
It was Tyler Algier.
Okay.
5th rounder, BYU, higher than Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker. It's Algier. Looking pretty good.
That's a good data point right now.
It's a good data point right now. It won't change. It definitely won't change. But Algier, he's a good player. He looked really good in this game. There was we saw the first of Kyle Trask. He went 3 for 9, didn't really do a whole lot. Bucs gave him a very small look where they might have a quarterback decision to make next year. It doesn't look like Trask will be the guy for the Bucs going forward. Bucs also had Robert Hainsey with an injury, their center. Said that they had to reshuffle the line a little bit. That's something to keep an eye on heading into next week. But the Bucs overall wanted to play some starters and then rest them as they were locked into the 4 seed. They're playing Dallas next week. It's the last playoff game of Super Wildcard Weekend. Monday Night Football in Tampa. Cowboys and Bucs. And then the Panthers beat the Saints 10-7.
They did.
All right, it's a good show.
Sam Darnold didn't play well after you talking up his performance in the last few weeks. What was his stat line?
Sam Darnold finished 5 of 15 for 43 yards.
Yeah.
That's 2.9 per attempt. 2 interceptions.
Yeah.
Passer rating, for context, of 2.8.
Don't forget the only touchdown they scored happened on a Sam Darnold fumble.
Yep, fumbled the ball into the end zone, recovered for a score.
By his offensive lineman, yeah.
Also had the game-winning drive, Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
He threw an interception. It's actually pretty amazing. He threw an interception with under 2 minutes left in the game, in a tie game, and then had a game-winning drive.
Yeah.
Because the Saints couldn't capitalize either.
I forget what the stat was, but he had some amazing statistic in this game where it's only happened twice, and the last time was the Seeing Ghosts game.
Yeah.
That's the kind of game that he had. By the way, the Saints are also incredible as a team at getting opposition players ejected.
Yeah.
Do you think their run, like the Marshawn Lattimore, Mike Evans thing, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, when he was there, was like the best wind-up merchant in the entire NFL. Marcus Davenport's last play in New Orleans might be to get himself ejected and get somebody else ejected at the same time. Like, the Saints are masters at getting people kicked out of the game.
That's your big takeaway, huh?
Yeah.
Saints defense was pretty legit down the stretch. Like really, really good.
Well, it would want to be because it was terrible for the first half of the year.
Yeah. So just really to wrap up the Sam Darnold thing, he's now been in the league since 2018. There have been multiple 3 and 4 week stretches where he has looked good, where he has
and every single one of them,
where he has had some level. There's been some optimism around Sam Darnold.
Every single one of them you've bitten hook, line, and sinker.
Every time.
Like a sucker.
End of 2018, he has a game and grades at 90, 88. He was one of our highest graded quarterbacks in the last 4 games of the season. In 2021 with the Panthers, they start 3-0. He's looking pretty good. And then this year, it felt a little bit different.
You're like those fish in the fish farm that don't even need like bait in the hook. Like they're so dumb that just the hook in the water will get them to bite.
When it comes to Sam Darnold.
You see Sam Darnold for
I didn't
a week,
really bite. I just said, maybe
1 week where he doesn't have an interception. You're
I
like,
wasn't signing him to be my starter or anything.
Maybe this is the year. Maybe it's come. Maybe the switch has gone on.
So he's looking pretty good for about 4 or 5 weeks here for the Panthers. And then he has this 34 grade yesterday. His season grade is 62 now.
Yeah.
Which is perfectly in line with the rest of his
every
career.
other year of his career.
He's 64, 63, 58, 54, 62.
He's just Jameis Winston again. It's the same. You're repeating history again with a different quarterback.
Jameis is different.
Every year, it's like this is the year it's going to come together.
Jameis is different.
And yet every year it's the same grade. Those guys have all had the same grade for the last 10 years.
Yeah. But if you just get rid of the bad.
And every year you go into the offseason being like, this year it's going to be different.
I didn't really buy into Darnold. I wasn't signing him as my starter or anything.
You
but I thought
the last week telling me about how well Darnold have been playing.
He's looking better.
Yeah.
Ball's coming out of his hand well. We've talked about this game too much.
You're such a chump.
He just didn't care that there were safeties there yesterday.
That's quite a problem when it comes to quarterback play in the NFL.
Aaron Rodgers did it too. He didn't care that Kirby Joseph was there.
Well, he just can't see Kirby Joseph. That's a Kirby Joseph specific problem. Darnold, it's like defenders, any of them.
Yeah. So that wasn't good.
No.
By the way, the Panthers won.
Yes, and all 4 teams in this division now finish with a losing record.
I mean, the Bucs didn't try in their last game, but it is the Bucs win the division at 8-9.
Tried for a while,
and then the Panthers, and they were winning for a while. The Panthers, Saints, and Falcons all finished 7-10 in the NFC South. I think that's every game. Let us know if we missed anything. That's pretty much everything. That's the season, man. How many games are there these days?
A lot.
We just talked about all of them. We previewed all of them. We reviewed all of them, except that one time we forgot Monday Night Football.
That wasn't this year, was it?
Oh, that was this year. Yeah, it's been a long season.
It was this year?
I think so.
After forgetting the Titans like multiple times last year, we forgot somebody this year?
We forgot the Titans season preview. Was that this year or last year? Now I'm losing it. Maybe rightfully so this year.
272 games? Does that sound right?
Yeah, we covered most of them.
Almost all of them.
Yeah, before and after the fact.
Yeah.
Now we're going to spend 3 hours on 6 games next week. Then we're
like,
going to spend 3 hours on 4 games.
It kills 99.9% of bacteria. We cover 99.9% of games.
That's right.
Probably.
You could guarantee that from the PFF NFL podcast. So anyway, we appreciate everybody. We appreciate everybody being with us throughout the season, whether you're live on YouTube watching, whether you're listening via audio. If you're on YouTube, don't forget, smash the thumbs up button because it helps us go viral. So that's it. We got a Wednesday show. We're going to do our bet review, right, on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
All of the preseason bets that we made and see how many we won, see how many we lost, see how many free subscriptions we can give out to those who beat us in bets.
Amongst other things. So, if you have any things you want us to talk about or cover, email us at nflpodcast@pff.com. But yes, Wednesday show will feature a roundup of the bets we had with listeners.
There's going to be some job changes, maybe PFF awards, end of the season awards to talk about. There's
like
a lot to
coaches.
talk about. Yeah, coaching changes.
I thought you meant like in the building. I was like, oh, we're just rolling that live, are we?
You haven't heard yet, huh?
Yeah, man.
Sam might not be here by Wednesday.
It's entirely possible.
All right, well, thanks to everybody for tuning in. That's it for us for today. We'll see you again on Wednesday.